We wish you a Merry Christmas. We wish you a Merry Christmas. We wish you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Good tidings we bring to you and your kin. We wish you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Oh, bring us something important. Oh, bring us something important. Oh, bring us something important. Let's bring it right here. Good tidings we bring to you and your kin. We wish you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. We won't go until we get some. We won't go until we get some.
Hello, my darlings. Good evening. I hope you're all in here. I don't know. Boomer hour. More boomer. I had my what do you call it? Mic settings completely off internally. So when I actually came to actually broadcasting, everything was all over the place. So yeah, another boomer evening. Hello to one and all. I hope your boomerness is strong. I hope the boomer is strong in you. I sense it. All right, kids. Well, the fact is that Mr. Raj of the Speaker's Corner wanted to have a little chat because he was constantly getting blocked and not chucked out of the chat room on Raspect's little live stream. And so I asked him if he wants to come on here and chill out with moi, and at least have his thoughts expressed. So we shall see. We shall see if Mr. Raj decides to come on. Darn it! How am I supposed to get this to him? Oh man, this is gonna be tricky. Okay, boys and girls. Oh damn. So yeah, this is not gonna be. This is gonna be interesting. How to actually get Raj the link for the StreamYard. Okay, that's gonna be something interesting, kids. I'm about to try and figure that one out. Hey, what's up, MC? What's up, MC? And Boaty McBoatface, and Autism Dad. Everyone's here. Halal as pigs in blankets. Yes, this is the halal stream. I should have actually called it the halal Christmas stream. Hello, Rich. Hello, Based Welsh. Oh, Based, you changed your logo. I didn't recognize you there. What's up, Based? What's up, Triple M? And Autism Dad, Boaty, everyone. Halal Cocoa. Merry Christmas, is it Dragnet? Merry Christmas, everyone. It is Christmas Eve. It was the night before Christmas. Nothing was stirring, not even a mouse, except for some Rastafarians and hello, Jake, Merry Christmas. Some Rastafarians and some Muslims who were desperate to, to ruin Christmas for everyone else. Because it is haram. It is haram to be in Christmas. So, I tell you what, I'm going to take a risk. I'll filter it another way. I will post the link for the chat and see who wants to jump on. You will have to be qualified prior to coming on, though. There will have to be a qualifying process. I cannot simply allow you on without that. So as long as we're all aware of that little process. I don't know if these are going to be... Actually, what am I worried about demonetizing tracks for? Nobody's going to demonetize a channel that's not monetized. I mean, the problem is, you see, when when YouTube comes at you with like copyrights and stuff, they don't strike your channel, but they lower your ratings. That means less people will see your video. That's the only part that I hate. It's you're getting double punishment. You don't just get punishment because you posted some video with some music that was copyrighted. You get punished by your videos being lowered in the rankings or just generally not recommended. It's the UK map of election. I know, dude. I know. I recognize it now. It's just that, you used to have this other logo, so it jolted me slightly. Righteous Rasta. Righteous Rasta. That's right, Autism Dad. The righteous Rasta man. Ruining Christmas because it's all about chattel slavery, innit? It's all about chattel slavery. Alright, Raj, here's the link again. But you will have to talk to me before I actually bring you into the live segment, before I switch over. So anyone that comes in has to have some modicum of qualification before they can jump on. I have to at least, we have to have a conversation in private chat. You probably have to come on voice, and then I will switch over to the thing, because I got caught by that one before when the Muslims, the righteous Muslims, had my channel strike the first time, and then YouTube went and strike my channel again, which I think is also the righteous Muslims who start to flag my my videos now to YouTube, and YouTube has now striked me again for the second time for some bullshit that I posted in like 2017, which seemed to be fine for 2 years, but all of a sudden now they're no longer fine. So we'll see how that unfolds. Well, I hope everyone can hear me. I hope it's all coming through nice and clear. But as far as conversational things are concerned, well, this seems to be kind of a shitty time for the Muslims. The Muslims are not happy that all the kuffars are celebrating the good old Christmas, the old Christmas. It seems Muslims are just pissed. Hey, what are you doing? Hey, not a verse. Hello, my lovely. I don't know, did you get the link? I'm just having a chill out. Raj really, I felt bad for Raj. This is more of a Raj thing. Raj was kind of getting kicked out and bullied on Raspek's channel, so I said to him, fuck it, come on my channel, we'll talk. You can have a conversation here, Raj. Is winning this Christmas. Raj is winning this Christmas. I think we're all winning this Christmas, everyone. We're winning the war against Islam, at least the pushback against Islam. I think this country, the British people, have, with no uncertain terms, told the invading Salah ad-Din's army that no, we shall not go quietly into the dark. We shall fight them on the beaches. We shall fight them in the streets. We shall fight them in the churches, and we shall fight them in the mosques. And yes, we will not simply bow our heads and allow the Islamification of the United Kingdom. At least those of us who give a shit about the United Kingdom. Chess prevails. Well, if Raj could play chess, it probably would. I don't know at the moment. I think he keeps calling the pieces horsey and the castle-y and the priest and those prawns, those funny shaped prawns which he constantly tries to eat, but it seems that they're not chewable. Because they don't seem to be. I think he replaced some of the prawns with like Angus. What's it called? Pacific Sea prawns. Oh my goodness. Yeah. The horsey and the castle-y thing. They move left and right and up and down, and the horsey jumps. And the priesties, well, the bishops, they just keep going after the little girls and the little boys. I don't know why they're hunting them down all the time. How are you supposed to checkmate that? I'm not sure. But anyway, less about that. This is a holy evening. We shall not dirty and sully this holy evening with smut talk. Oh, it's Nada. Hello, Nada. Okay, Nada, could you come on and say a couple of words? I'm sure it's you, but just in case.
Yeah, it's me, brother. It's me.
Oh, wonderful,
It's definitely me.
wonderful. I can now
And
switch over to the Hangout segment
yeah, I'm a
because
medical doctor.
you are you a medical?
So 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 you can let me on. I'm,
Yeah, no,
don't worry, Banksy. Don't worry. I'm a medical doctor.
that's nice. That's nice. No, it's just I have to qualify because the last time that the Muslims pulled the trick, although I don't think any of them are up or any of them care at the moment, but yeah, I mean, one time I allowed a couple of people on, and then they were not. Well, one of them actually pretended to be Raj, and the other one pretended to be Sean Bassey, and then they turned on their cam with porn, and then they flagged my channel
Oh
to
wow,
YouTube. Yeah, it was a dirty, dirty trick, but that's Muslims for you. No,
wow.
you know, for the infidels, they will do anything.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Here's what you could do. With me, I do play chess, have played since I was a little kid, and you could actually just ask me like chess questions, and you could do that with me from now on. And a lot of these trolls won't be able to answer, and you'll be like, oh,
There
okay.
you go.
No.
There you go. Or actually, I think we should also reserve some coded words for the religion of that you created.
Yes, exactly. You can ask me. There you go. That's our thing. Exactly. I mean, the fact that I had another revelation. Everyone, Merry Christmas, infidels. I've had another revelation. You know.
Nice, nice. So how was things? How was your? I'm sorry I didn't hang around too long for with Tequila Watch, but I kind of came in, said my piece, and I was off on the Tequila Watch stream. How did things go there?
Oh, it went really well. No, I appreciate any time that you can come. You're like you're one of my faves for sure. And definitely, when I see you, you see that I'm like Banksy. I'm like a little kid. Daddy just came home. Daddy's home.
Okay.
So yeah.
But no, no, you had some very very good. This is why I say I felt okay to check out because I know you had Ralph, you had who else was there? Reggie. Reggie is a regular at Speaker's Corner. He's a good speaker. He's a really
Yeah.
intelligent chap. And I think there was Mojo. Mojo was still there.
Mojo dude. We had that Manny Cinder came on.
Yes, that's right, Manny. Yes, yeah.
Yeah, we had Kalam. Kalam came on.
Oh yeah, yeah. Kalam is brilliant. I love listening to him.
Yeah.
He's
But
such a well thought out individual.
honestly, like I'm surprised you stand on. Like I just like man that was gut wrenching. That one poor woman that well she's all right now, but that mustard seed man that was
Oh
like that story. I
yeah,
was like
yeah,
whoa,
yeah.
that
That
definitely.
mustard seed story was actually quite
Yeah.
intense. I mean,
Yeah.
I'll be honest. I think she was cutting in and out for me a little bit, but I the most that I got was that she was being molested by her brother or something.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think it was worse than that. That's the nice way of putting it. But yeah, it was a really horrible ordeal, and I
Yeah.
was like, whoa! Like it took a change the tone, of the conversation, which I don't mind, and I appreciate her bravery
Mm.
and fortitude, and broaching that subject and speaking so openly, and I welcome people to do that. But in this case, it was like it definitely changed the tone. You know what I mean? So and like I was like I'm more in a like I like to joke around stuff like that, and obviously when that comes up, you're kind of like okay, you kind of have to change your entire
Yeah.
tonality has to be altered. When
Yeah.
you're discussing those kind of very very things. I can't talk about my revelations with in that context. Yeah, people don't really want to hear about that.
Yeah, no, it changed the yeah, you couldn't be jovial with that sort of conversation because she
Yeah.
suddenly came in it was unusual that she just laid it all bare. So I mean, I guess she must be in a good place with everything psychologically that
Mhm.
she could just talk about it so openly.
Yeah.
But it was jarring. It was very
Yeah.
jarring.
It was a good stream, and we had Ralph, right reaction. Ralph came
Of
on,
course,
and
yeah.
I love his one-liners, and when he talks to some of these people, it's just like it's amazing. They're having a conversation with him, and that one what's his name, that Lister, when he was talking to him on COE last week. I was like, I can't even like, I'm telling you, he made me spit out my coffee. The things that he says, like, it's like he's
Oh, sorry. Hello. Sorry. Hold on. Hold on. Hold on. Can you still hear me? I apologize. Okay. Okay. You can hear me. I okay. Talk to me because I just messed up my headset. And hello. Can you still hear me?
yeah, yeah,
Ah,
yeah. I can
okay,
hear.
okay, it's back. Sorry, I was just fiddling trying to increase the volume on my headset because it's weird that these particular headsets that I'm using seem to have a very low volume. And when I change over to the loudspeakers, then I'll get echo. So I've got this weird competition at the moment with my headsets versus loudspeakers. But don't worry, carry on. Yeah, yeah, you were saying Ralph came in, and then also Sophia Films also came in. Hello, hello. Oh no, just hold on, hold on. I think I think it's gone again. The headsets. Hold on, hold on, hold on. Can you hear me? Hello? Ah, okay, you can hear me. Let me. Okay,
Yes,
okay, I can hear you. I can hear you. You can hear me fine.
this is like that like yeah, like that's that old like cell phone or mobile the Verizon commercial that was like, can you hear me now? Can you hear me
Can you
now?
hear me
Can you
now?
hear me now?
Exactly.
Yeah. Or like
Exactly.
this is like when like one of my aunts talks to like relatives from Serbia. She speaks to them as though it's like World War II still. Hello, you hear me? Do you know what? Can you hear what I'm saying right now? Do you hear me? Are you okay? You know, like she's talking to people as if they're in a underground bunker. It's like it's just a phone call. It's just a phone call, woman. It's all right. You know, they can hear you. It's okay. You know, it's 2019. They can hear you. I assure you. So yeah, it's like
Yeah, I
that. But
know,
we
I know.
had
It's
yeah.
just that I'm having yeah, I've got this new microphone, and it has a built-in sort of headset in it, or headphone, and if I don't use it, then I'll have to use my main. I mean, this is not my main machine. This is not my main computer that I stream from or I use for like my internet, if you like, YouTube channel work. It's just unfortunately, since my motorcycle accident, I can't sit in a chair, regular chair. I have to be lying down on one side or the other at the moment still. So because of that, I have to use a secondary computer that is actually next to my bed. So yeah, so I have to. I'm improvising with equipment that isn't of professional grade, shall we say?
Yeah, exactly. Like you're like basically you're like in a like a person like one of the like in a geriatric hospital now. Like living that lifestyle, right? You're like
Kind of. I'm just, yeah, I'm just, as I say, I'm just lying on I'm trying to lie on my bed sideways with the weight off my tailbone at all times because the pain just gets bigger. It's like an ever expanding pain level, and then eventually gets to a point where I can't stand it anymore, and then I have to move. So I can't, when I go out and I have to sit in places, it's a continuous sort of struggle against pain, against
well, you
suffering.
see, this is the life that you're at right now. Like I said, so pretty soon you'll be using a donut cushion. You'll be traveling like that. You'll go to somebody's house. You'll like
I
pull out this
know,
like donut pillow and sit down on that.
I
But
know.
listen, if you start to get an urge to steal anybody's Jello or fruit cup, then it's time that then let me know because we have to have a talk.
Exactly, exactly. If I get to that point, I'll give
Let
you
me
a
know,
holler.
please.
But
Yeah,
yeah,
holla.
at the moment, it's yeah. I mean, the pillow thing. I was recommended by my physiotherapist to actually get one of those pillow type things because they're actually people who have hernias or no what is it?
Hemorrhoids.
Hemorrhoids, exactly. One of those hemorrhoid pillows. Uh, for now, I've avoided sort of getting it, and besides this Christmas, there's no deliveries. But but I think I may have to get it.
No deliveries on Christmas. Yeah, exactly. You're missing your chance. You missed your chance. You have to wait a couple days for Amazon to pick it back up again.
I know, it's crazy. But but yeah, so that's been my adventures. But yeah, so that's the reason why I'm struggling with my headset. Is this microphone I have. Although the microphone itself is amazing, the headset setup is not quite there yet. I have to work on that a little bit to try to get things working better.
Yeah,
But
yeah, but with that, what we were saying about Sophia Films came on. Yeah, I was surprised about that. He doesn't
mm,
really, that's his first time like speaking openly like that on the stream, and that was pretty cool. He seems like he has a lot to add. A little bit of passion there, which is really good. I mean, he's been in this for a long time, so it's
yeah,
pretty interesting.
actually, Sophia Films was relatively active about 6 to 8 months ago on our various different streams and stuff. He used to come in and out and be quite chatty, but then he suddenly went on radio silence, and I didn't see or hear of him for months. Now, either he just took some time off or something happened where he just decided he's no longer really going to be that active on these streams. But I'm glad that he's back again because he does have actually a lot of knowledge, and he used to follow the antics of Speaker's Corner a fair bit. But I don't know. I don't know. I'm glad that some of these guys are actually making a comeback. Maybe just people just burn out.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, this happens like even like I was talking to Kalam, like even like when for you guys that go like I call it the front line, the ones that are like, at speaker's corner,
Yeah, yeah.
you get burned out after a while, and then you got to kind of pull back a little bit and then, then come back again, back a little bit. You can't just that constantly all the time, every day, every day, every day.
Exactly.
Yeah, it
Well,
starts to get a little maddening.
what I actually found, and this is why I actually took, I would say, 6 months almost, at least 4 or 5 months. It was June, July, I think, the last time I was in Speaker's Corner because I had some individual physically sort of, they set up a scenario where they could justify physically assaulting me, and it wasn't that the assault itself was terrible. It was actually very minor, but my anger and my reaction to that could have been far worse. So I had to stop myself for a while because if I'd gone back, I would have severely hurt this individual. And I wanted to severely hurt this individual. I relished the thought of severely hurting this individual. But then I started to sort of think about what is the payoff on this, apart from self satisfaction and some degree of ego boost. There is no other payoff. This individual is on government benefits. He has no job. He has no life. He has nothing that I could take away from him.
Whoa, whoa,
Uh,
whoa, whoa! I gotta get this straight. Somebody attacked you?
yeah, yeah. They set up a scenario in which a young boy of about 12, 13 years old stole my hat twice. He pulled it off my head once, but he threw it on the ground. So I ignored him and I just picked up my cap and I put it back on and I was engaged with this other guy he's called Waleed. And we were talking some more, and then this 12-year-old child stole my hat again. But this time when he turned around, he didn't drop my hat, he kept it, and he was running away. So I managed to grab him with one hand because I had a camera in my other hand. And as I was holding on to him, he threw my hat. And as he threw my hat, I actually let go of him. But then Modine, this other guy, he calls himself Modine, he comes to Speaker's Corner regularly. He came from behind me and he smacked me in the face. Well, he tried to punch me in the face, but it was actually very light and very
Wait, which
soft.
one? I'm sorry. Which one gave you a shot to the face? Which one?
His name is Modine. He calls himself
I know, I
Modine.
know exactly. I know who he is, and I know who Walid is. Selena, Walla Walla.
There
That
you
one.
go. There you go. So it was Modine. Modine was the one who knocked me in the jaw. Just bear with me one second. I just want to see if this is Raj. Raj, could you say hello, please?
Yeah, it's me, it's me, it's me,
Okay.
it's me.
Good man.
Yeah.
Good man.
All
And
right, all right.
this is MC. MC, could you say hello, please? MC. MC.
Boot him, boot him, boot him.
I'm sorry, MC. If you don't say hello, I have to take. I mean, the logo and everything looks right. Can you hear me? Oh no, I can't hear you. You gotta unmute yourself, MC.
Wait. That logo, isn't that Ifrit's hand? That's Ifrit's hand, right?
Yeah, that is MC's hand. But MC, unmute yourself.
No, No,
You
no,
muted
I
yourself
said
again. I unmuted you. You muted yourself. Unmute yourself.
no. I'm saying that
Oh, he's gone.
I'm talking about the Dajjal, Ifrit.
Oh,
The like.
the devil. Yeah, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
it's like a rock and roll devil. Device not connected. Okay, he dropped
Oh, okay.
off. The guest will need to connect their mic before you can add them to the stream. Ah, okay. His mic's disconnected, so he's having mic issues. A failed experiment. You will never get on this show. So I don't know why you're in the back chat, but consider yourself just sitting there forever because I'm never letting you on.
Uh-oh.
Failed experiment is just a troll. He's just straight up troll.
Oh, yeah?
He's not actually anyone that's worth engaging with. But anyway, as I was saying, yeah, Modine. So he made contact, let's say, with my face, but it wasn't really a punch. It wasn't anything. But nevertheless, my fury and anger towards that was greater. And if I'd gone back there, I would definitely have engaged in physical contact with him. I mean, it's so easy to invoke him into a fight. It would have been a fight. It would have been a fight, no doubt. So I thought to myself, I should take some time, get out of the speaker's corner toxic environment, which is what it was. I was also extremely sort of caught up in the toxicity of that environment as well. And it was actually having a negative result on my physiology. I couldn't sleep at times. So it was actually having a lot of negative results on my own psyche. So I took myself out of that environment for a while. And although I intended to go back after only a couple of months, I ended up meeting someone, and then my weekends were then monopolized by the lady that I was seeing. So that took a few more months, and then next thing we know, here we are. It's like 6-7 months, I think. Raj, how long has it been since the last time I went there?
That's crazy.
I know,
not long enough.
not long enough.
Hey.
I'm coming back, dude. I'm coming back.
No, we need you, but we need you back, man. We need you back.
Hey, Raj, how you doing?
Oh,
How
yeah,
you doing? You
Raj, Nada,
Yeah,
you guys
right.
know each other, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
we
know
spoke
Raj.
the other day. She's a very strict panel host. Let's say that.
Well,
Yes, she
I
does.
try
Right,
not to
so-
let the inmates run the asylum.
She runs a
Yeah,
tight
very
ship.
strict.
She
I was
runs a tight ship.
there was a few times I wanted to just say something, but I had to keep quiet. All right, don't tell her off.
But Raj,
Obviously,
we
it
got
would
to
have just been it would have just been like go to the kitchen and wash the dishes, woman. That's it. That's as far as I go with
Listen,
females.
Raj, just so you know, I'm not a so-called snowflake, and I'm all about the God over man, man over woman, woman over child. So
Oh no!
you're not
no.
gonna trigger me with that. I would be fine with that. I'd be like, okay,
Because there was that young lady on the Tequila watch, and she had a very sweet voice, but she was annoying me. And all I said was like, go back to the kitchen and wash the dishes.
Uh-huh.
And everyone in the chat was going mad. How dare you? But
big
that's
deal.
my way. That's my way of just like rather than screaming at a woman, because I don't like screaming at females. Is just to say the kind of the most offensive thing I can say without really being too horrible.
Except for
So,
me,
yeah.
that doesn't even offend me. I'm like,
I know. You're almost like a goddamn Salafi wife.
You would think so. I'm an enigma. I'm an enigma. There's it's like crazy. It's like I could host a meeting at the UN or clean the dishes and put a roast in the oven. You never know.
Yeah, but on an important note is like that's not such a bad thing though. Like
No.
I'm not saying women should be in the kitchen with it, although it's good to see it, no doubt about it. No offense, but it's like my sisters here. Like all of them are very dominating females. Like obviously, like they had to be with someone, and they're very dominating. They like, but they still have their feminine side. Like they can freaking well roast me, but they can still go and roast I don't know, a goddamn toast at the same time for me. So it's like both worlds, isn't it? You don't have to be a weak woman to be able to cook and stuff and wash the dishes. It's not.
No, I don't think. And for
Not-
me, it's not. That's not offensive. To me, that's like okay. So for instance, I see why you're doing it. You're doing it to trigger somebody. But for me personally, what I think is funny is when they do get triggered by that. When women do get all triggered by that, I actually trigger women with that kind of stuff. So I'm like,
No,
have
what
you
it is
have you
here?
washed
What it
your
is
dishes
here?
today? Have you fed
You know,
your
what it-
children today?
No, what it is here, I've grown up with 4 very strong females here, and my mum's very strong. Like, she's actually Like, you know, when you have like a family where the father's quiet but the mum's much more dominant. So I was always grown up with like females that are very dominating. Like they're not like little. They're all of them. Three of them have got a degree, their work and stuff like that. So, you know, I realized after a long time, it took me a long time. No point arguing like with females. Just say something quite rude and leg it. Yeah,
Yeah,
and just
they
say
actually get
that's
very,
it.
they're very emotional. So yeah, that's true. With like women, and that's a fact. And of course, a lot of women want to deny this, but women are dictated by their emotions very often, naturally. And men have a different brain. Their brain works differently. And the way, like in Serbia, the way that we kind of work is that there's like a saying that's like the man is the head, but the woman is the
Mm,
neck. If they don't work
mm.
together as partners, they both get screwed.
Yeah, and the thing
So
is
it's
that
like
you
that.
can't. Whatever thing is that, like, if you start arguing with a female and you get too vicious, then you lose. Whatever you do, if you're too soft, you lose. If you get too vicious, you lose. If
Yeah.
you start screaming, you lose. So I learned a lot. Like, it took me a long time to learn. Is like, just don't even entertain it. Just say something, and just keep your mouth quiet. Go in your room, go outside, run, or bash the door in, or whatever, and just don't entertain it to that degree. And I'm not being disrespectful. I'm just saying that you're going to lose in an argument with a woman if you start losing your temper.
Yeah. What?
That's
But
my thing.
there's also, I found that there's a lot of men that their mothers have sort of imprinted that female energy onto them, and I see a lot of men
Mm.
that get very hysterical and can't control their emotions, which is like pretty surprising, but it does happen, more and more.
I'm like that still. I'm still like that. I can get in that mode as well because I've grown around a lot of females. So it's
Have you
yeah you
have you forgiven your father?
um I don't think there's anything to forgive him for. Look, some people are just quiet people. They just like the people that are introverted, and I don't think that was something that is a bad thing. But he just wanted to work, pay the bills, and just give them money, and then he would just go. Like he didn't want no real hassle. You understand? Like when you're working hard. So for
Like
him,
you have to like sort of like forgive your, where I'm coming from is like the whole idea that you have to forgive your father for allowing your mother to imprint her female energy on you. Like it's like, but it's not like forgive him like he's done these horrible
yeah,
things. I'm saying like he's done something bad, but like sort of like that, because you start to get this sort of resentment. Some, a lot of guys I see this happens, and what they do is they
mm,
sort of kind of start to resent their because they're the mom, these types of moms that you're talking about, this
mm,
so-called dominant. What they do is a lot of times they'll sort of push that thing. They'll push they'll push the father as a bad guy, or
mm,
sometimes an okay guy, and it'll go back and forth, and they play mind games. Women do that. A
mm,
woman could,
mm,
the manipulation of a woman like no other. You know
mm.
what I mean? So then a lot of times, so then kind of a guy needs to almost forgive his dad for not, not sort of like putting a stop to that.
I can imagine you going great at a woman's meeting.
I am. I'm very popular. I'm very popular.
I can imagine it. Yeah, I kind of look here. Look
Yes.
here. I kind of like when I think about it, I'm like, okay, yeah. I wish there are times I wish, I think he should have been stronger in his thingy. But he was also in those situations where, like, it was a lose-lose situation. Like, if he did anything too strong, I would have been on his back. If he didn't, do you understand? Like,
Yeah.
I'm very protective. So sons have this weird relationship with their mothers, obviously, at night. And so, like, he couldn't really win whatever he did. I think he did the easy route or the best route with the least friction, which is just to kind of work hard, pay the bills, do the thingy, and just let everything else kind of be done by my mum and stuff, like the big decisions and stuff.
Yeah,
So
but then
yeah.
look, now your sisters are like your mom. And so then what happens in their households? It's just like a sort of thing that keeps going on and on. This whole like, and I'm about the partnership between
Mm.
a husband and a wife, a man and a woman. That's what I'm about. It's not about, I recognize that men have certain strengths and women have certain strengths. That's all. I just recognize that.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think one thing that Islam kind of like not nails on the head, but they have a good understanding of the importance of a defined kind of female male role. Yeah, I'm not
Yeah.
saying that you should be in the kitchen. I'm just saying that they understand that they both are different, but they both have strengths, and together, you then have the ultimate what you call kind of like let's say package to raise a family. Now, if you say both of them are the same, then you're only going to get one side of the kind of one side of whatever. So if the male's like too female, yeah, then the child's going to come out very female. Do you understand? It
Yeah.
needs to be a mix.
Yeah, but I don't want to say that the Islamic model is the one to follow. In my opinion,
No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying they've got a better understanding they have not better, but they have an understanding of there's a strength between the two sexes being slightly different. Whereas in the West, they want to make them the same.
They don't really recognize the strengths. They only recognize that females are there to breed and do menial things around the house and breed, and so that's kind of like you simply. And it's not about demeaning. It's that it's actually they're not using a wonderful resource in their life, in their societies. What I'm talking about is about. It's not about one. It's I do believe that there are traditional roles for men and women, but then that's definitely not the model to use in a household.
Yeah, I mean they take it to the extreme. Obviously,
Yeah.
they take it. It's like the West there. They've taken things to the extreme in terms of equality. So now that for them, equality doesn't mean that everyone should be treated the same. It's that we are the same. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's no difference between people.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh, damn, MC's gone. I was about to allow MC onto the panel and wanted to have him say a few words just to confirm, but unfortunately he's jumped out.
Yeah,
MC,
can
when you get
we,
a chance, come back.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you was here in the chat with Halsey on another channel.
I
Was
heard
you listening?
the tail end of all that. I didn't hear most of it, but go ahead.
Yeah, because I mean, it was basically about Bob. Bob, and there's a narrative going around on a lot of these channels that Bob was some kind of like a pawn used by the FBI, and they entrapped him. But my argument was that although the FBI does do that to a certain degree, ultimately Bob was radicalized, and the FBI found him because of his radical views. Not that the FBI radicalized him, because they're trying to make it as if he was radicalized by the FBI. But the FBI, you don't get onto the radar of the FBI until you are radicalized. And all the FBI does, or these authorities, whether you agree with it or not, is give you options and say, okay, so they'll give them the option of, okay, go to Syria. And ultimately, it's Bob's decision as to whether he decided to go. Yeah, the option was given to him, though. He's still an adult. And obviously, if you're like 12, 13 years old, you can argue that. But when you're in your 20s, and someone says to you, all right, do you want to go to Syria? And then you say yes, then you're going to have to be held accountable for your actions. I don't know if that's crazy.
They give you the rope to hang yourself with. And Bob took that rope and he hung himself with it very nicely.
No, but the thing I was concerned about is that they're trying to make out as though Bob was radicalized by some FBI agent, and I was just trying to make the sometimes when you're on those planets, because everyone's against you, sometimes you start thinking to yourself, am I making sense? But I was trying to just point out that Bob had to get to a point by himself, or people around him, to that point that he then got onto a radar of the FBI, and then the FBI, all they did was to kind of, like, let's just say, get at the true nature of the guy. So you don't just get on the FBI's radar if you're some good little Muslim boy going to pray and stuff, but you will get on the radar if you're playing Nasheed from ISIS and you're playing ISIS videos. Do you understand?
I mean, well, the thing is
that common sense? Am I making sense, or am I crazy?
Oh yeah, I mean, absolutely. The thing is,
Wait, I just want to say yes and yes to Raj's question.
Yeah.
Okay,
Go ahead.
thanks.
yeah, I mean, I agree. It's just, I actually think the people that radicalized him were the people who sold him the narrative, although he already had this narrative from the Quran and the Hadiths, that these evil Americans and the evil English are now killing your people. You have to go save them, and people like Respect are the ones who do that. To this very evening, Respect said, ISIS are not more evil than America because America bombed Iraq first. ISIS, he literally justified ISIS's actions as being better than America's actions because he felt that chattel slavery and buck breaking are worse in the 21st century, things that happened hundreds of years ago, but still are worse in the 21st century than what ISIS is doing. So
my argument, I mean, if you just give me your true opinion, because I'm not right all the times. I know everyone thinks I am because I'm the originator, but I can be wrong. So my particular argument was this: that my argument was this, because when you're in these panels, they try and make you feel like you're talking crazy. Like I was saying this, that if you take all the baggage out of the white, like let's say take all the USA's past out. Just take all of that out, and just look at the USA as of today and moving forwards. And you take ISIS and take all their package out, their bad deeds from before, and just moving forwards. I believe that if I was using my own kind of homeland, obviously my people are from the Punjab, obviously UK is my home as well. That I believe the USA went into the Punjab and took control through military means, it would be bloody. But once they're in rule, they're not going to be kind of like telling Sikhs not to practice their religion. They're not going to be kind of executing people en masse for doing X, Y, Z, practicing their faith or whatever. And I was trying to argue that if ISIS was to come into the Punjab, if people did not convert, they would be put to the sword. Anybody that was against ISIS would literally have their head on a stick, yeah, and there would be no freedom of anything. So out of the two, although I don't want either, I would say one is worse,
No,
which is ISIS. Is that logical reasoning? I don't know if that makes sense.
The thing is, I'll try and make it very short because I want to hear Nada's opinion on this as well. The problem is, Raj, what you don't realize is the United States has come to a point in its history in which they would never want to do such a thing, at least not intentionally, in order to invade and occupy your country. If Punjab has expressed an actual danger to the United States, that's when you have problems with the United States.
We're doing a hypothetical. Let's not
Yeah,
get into
I know. But what I mean is,
but if I'm asking if they did, I would say that if you was to say to me, look, I'm just doing a hypothetical. If I was given a choice, and this is not going to happen, I was given a choice. Either America's going to invade you or ISIS.
yeah.
I would, but the conclusion is always going to be that they're going to win. So I'm not saying they can beat us, but the conclusion will always be they would win. I would choose America over ISIS just because of the fact that we know if ISIS come into power, I would be seen as a dhimmi and somebody that is beyond. We're just cattle. They could literally just rape our women and do X, Y, Z with no repercussions.
No
yeah,
problem.
and it's also So for me, it's the lesser of two evils, basically.
Yeah, but it's. I mean, I'll explain in 1 second. It seems Santa's little helper, which looks like Bunga Bunga Party. Can you just say hello or something, so that we can qualify who you are, please? Could you unmute yourself?
Yep. I'm not Bunga Bunga Party. Much as I'd love to be at Bunga Bunga Party, I'm afraid that I'm stuck at home with you lot.
Oh, so you're not
Who
Bunga
is this,
Bunga
then?
Party?
I don't recognize. I'm sorry.
I'm just some guy with the tag Santa's little helper. Actually,
You're gonna have to. Bunga Bunga
Happy
Party.
Christmas, everybody, by the way.
Boat. Oh, sorry, Boaty McBoatface. I'm sorry, it's Boaty McBoatface's logo. At least that's the same logo anyway.
Happy Christmas, everyone, as
Oh,
well. Happy Christmas.
Happy Christmas. Yeah, is that true? Are you Boaty McBoatface, Santa?
Yeah.
All right,
Yeah.
awesome.
Oh.
Okay, I have
It's Boaty. It's Boaty.
qualified Boaty's.
I'm a little bit concerned about coming on the show because the thing is that the trouble is that some of the guests you get on are a bit extreme, But I don't mean to sort of divert your
Are they?
chat. I mean, if somebody comes on and starts commenting on German marching music, I'm off. Right?
Who's come on commenting on German marching music?
Well,
I talk about Ralph.
I'm not saying no. I didn't say Ralph. You said Ralph. I'm not saying.
No. Don't say Ralph. Say Jawala.
I'm not saying
Jawala.
anybody. I'm not.
Chaiwala. Well, I mean, I have an eclectic group of people from time to time commenting on certain things, and yeah, I do find myself in strange waters sometimes, in politically speaking.
Sorry, I don't mean to divert your conversation. There was just one thing that I was really concerned about is with Bob was I think the guy had very serious issues. I'm not a medical man, I don't know, but I think he had very serious issues, and I am concerned that, and I'm not trying to make excuses for him, but the thing is I am concerned that guy, he was in many ways he was not well, and I'm wondering, if it is indeed him that's been sort of nicked, and if he is looking at 20 years, and that's not been confirmed yet, I have concerns about that. Am I wrong in that?
Concerns in
Should-
what sense? As in, he shouldn't be arrested, or
No,
he's
no, no, no,
arrested
not that.
and
I don't know. I don't know. The thing is that it struck me. Do you know there was a guy who been a number of sort of terrorist acts, and they've been carried out by people with issues, like with problems, and I'm not. I wonder sometimes whether they're using a religion as a kind of refuge, that they're using that. It's a sort of it's like a device that they actually use that motivates them to carry out terrible acts. Am I making sense to you?
No, I agree with you
I
that
can.
mental health is going to be an issue, no doubt about it. You can't take that out of the equation. But ultimately,
Serious.
yeah,
Sorry.
but ultimately, the guy, was doing stuff was so savage. Like, I mean, he would be putting up videos that no normal human being would
Yes.
relish and putting up. And you got to understand his mindset. Just wasn't that he's mentally ill. He had become to the point that I think he was like psychotic or something like that. And for me personally, it's kind of personal because the guy was not only putting my home address out everywhere. He was also putting my father's pictures up, my home picture as his avatar. I'm telling you, and he could have got me literally hurt, or even killed. So I have very little sympathy for him, which is why I reported him twice to the FBI. I mean, to the MI5, and I'm glad I did because that type of individual, whether he's mentally ill or not, he can still do immense amount of damage if he has the right, let's just say the resources at his hand.
Yeah.
Actually, I'd like Nada. Do you want to get in on this? Do you have any thoughts? Nada?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you just hold on for just 1 minute? I'll be right back.
Oh, sure. No worries. No worries. In that case, we'll circle back. Yeah, Boti, I agree with you in the sense that these people could and probably are, mentally challenged, weak, disabled in some form or fashion.
I'm
They have
back.
psychological needs. Do you know what I
Sorry
mean?
about that. I'm just like
Yeah. I mean,
you're trying
I'm not a medical man. Welcome back, by the way, Nada, and happy Christmas. Whatever.
Merry Christmas.
Yeah.
Happy Christmas, everyone.
Happy Hanukkah. Right.
Did you see that? Hold on, Dan. Did you see that video of me trolling? What's his name? Little Suleiman with the Happy Christmas.
Yes, I saw that video.
Oh my
That was
God,
good.
we was doing the right little thingy with it, man.
Suleiman is like if the hobbits of the Shire ever become a jihadi. That's what
Mm.
it would look like.
That is a perfect description, actually. Yes.
If
Yes,
Frodo ever decides to join Saruman or Sauron.
Yes, exactly. I could see him like hopping onto one of the walking trees. I mean, I really could. It's amazing.
I could. One of the ends.
Dear God,
Yeah.
Raj, you are fearless, man. You're fearless. My God, my toes curl up sometimes when I see you doing what you've done in that park. I don't know how you have the guts to do it. Actually,
I'll be honest with you. Look here, what it is that I fear. Look, for me, I actually fear, and I don't like saying this openly, but I fear for like the Sikh community's future. And I know people can say, "Oh, Raj, you hate Sikhs," but I do fear for, and I'm talking about the Sikh community within the UK and the world, that a lot of backlash from these lunatics does go upon the Sikh community. I mean, even after 9/11, the Sikhs got the attack and someone was killed. I'm not saying I want any other group hurt. I'm just saying that I want people to see that most Sikhs may not agree with me in a lot of things, but they do agree that this kind of behavior with this like extreme Islamism and terrorism is wrong. So if I'm going to do that every Sunday to go there and remind people, then I'll do it.
Yeah, you're like the frontline crew. That's what I was telling Banksy earlier. You guys are like the frontline crew. You, Steve, so many of you. Obviously.
Yeah, but I have a more of a kind of like, look here. I've got nephews and nieces, and two of my nephews are what you call baptized Sikhs. Who up with me, they're very religious, and they've got beards and turbans, and so when they walk down the street, I do fear for their safety in the future if things carry on the way they do, because they will be seen as like the way they're dressing as a kind of a target in some way if things
By
don't
whom?
start.
By whom?
I'm just saying people like, maybe the far right and people like that, because I don't consider Tommy Robinson the far right. I mean the real far right. He will start to kind of like, take out stuff. So for me, like going down Speaker's Corner and just challenging these guys and stuff like that, one, I hope that, people can see that there are really people out there like, this Abdul Qasim and Abdul Hakim and them lot that are very dangerous people. But on top of that, like, I want people to see that the Sikhs as people are not for this bullshit as well. Even if they disagree with me, they don't agree with the bullshit that's going on in the UK overall. And so I have my kind of like a two-pronged approach in that kind of sense, because when I'm wearing my turban, obviously I'm a Sikh, and a lot of people, especially in America and stuff and places like that, I want them to see that, the Sikhs are not against democracy, secularism, or freedom of speech and stuff like that.
Yeah, actually, in the United States, I just want to say, in the United States, for instance, there is this thing, like I spoke about this before, but they see a turban here in the United States, or they see a long beard like that, and they think, oh, terrorists, right? But in reality, there's like, the Orthodox priests, the Serbian Orthodox priests, Greek Orthodox priests, all these priests wear those long beards, and then you have like the turbans and also the long beards, and the beards you have with the Sikhs. And I'm like always like, no, not like don't worry, this is not a jihadi, relax, Are
you from America then? Are you still in America?
Yeah, I moved.
Oh, yeah.
I moved to the. My story's a little weird, but my dad came to the U.S. he's an aerospace engineer, and he came here for a job, and then decided to stay. And then I was born, and then when I was 1 year old, we moved back to Serbia, and then because my mom missed the family and all that kind of stuff, and then when I was about 10, we made the move back to the U.S. Finally. So that's kind of like my story. So technically, I'm like a 1.5 generation. Like I'm kind of first generation, but I'm kind of not, because
so are you from Serbia? Is that your ethnicity, your background is Serbian?
Yeah.
All right. So all right, makes sense now. So you kind of have an understanding of how kind of like this kind of issues can spiral out of control when you've got different groups.
I'm East-West. I'm kind of like fusion food. That's me. Like I'm like that's where I'm like
Raj, can I ask you? I mean, you mentioned about the problem with being the fear of being attacked. Is that a problem in London?
No, I wouldn't say. Look, in London and the UK, I think we've got to a point now where most people know that the Sikh people are a different group. And so I don't really fear that within the UK per se, but I've been America twice, to LA, a terrible place. Sorry to the LA, lovely to look at, absolute garbage in terms of infrastructure. So I've been there twice, and the reason I was flown out there for free is because there's an organization called Sikh Lens, and they're there to kind of promote who Sikhs are within America. And the reason they had to do it is because Sikhs were getting attacked.
Attacked?
Yeah, I mean, killed. There's been murders in America. Yeah. After 9/11, the first person to get killed in revenge or retaliation was a Sikh guy. I think he was at a petrol station. He had a turban and a beard, and someone shot him in the back of the head or something like that. And there's been a lot of attacks. And before I say what I'm going to say,
I just have to clarify really quick. When you say a lot, I just want people to know on the scale thing. We're talking about 300 and around 340 people, 340 million people, and we're talking about just a handful of incidences. And maybe one murder. Not murder, not murder, but one attack. I'm sorry, not murder, but one attack. So
there is a lot more. There is a lot more. You may not have heard of them, but I know of a load of them that has happened. And when they're attacking people, they're mentioning about ISIS and Al Qaeda and all that kind of stuff. And it's happened in New York. There's been loads of places. I'll probably do a show and show you how many. And what happens is that so my audience on YouTube, or the people I'm kind of talking to, isn't literally the UK population. It's kind of a wider kind of like.
Banksy, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Sorry.
Yes.
Okay,
so,
MC is on. Okay, Raj, carry on, please.
Merry Christmas, everyone, by the way.
Yeah, Merry Christmas. Okay, so Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
So my thing is to kind of like is more outside of America and places. Because when I went to LA, I heard a lot of stories from the people down there that the problems they face in America. And I'm not saying, before I say anything, it doesn't mean I want any other group to be hurt. or to be marginalized. I'm just saying, as a Sikh here, we have zero to do with this ideology or their kind of like philosophy.
Do you know if
I'm
Muslims are being attacked in America? I don't know. That's why I asked.
They will be, and even in the U. And so I'm not saying I want the
In
other
this
group
country,
attacked.
is it?
Well,
I don't know about this.
I have actually seen video footage of hijabi girls being attacked, and actually, like, these are CCTV cameras. One of them was actually
Yeah, I
pushed
have
onto
as well.
railways. I mean, there are some really horrible things.
Pushed
This
downstairs and stuff. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
horrible.
It's because the
Horrible.
only two groups, if you like, are easily identifiable as Eastern, if you will.
And sort of
are-
soft targets as well. I mean,
Yeah.
it's like a cowardly. It's a
Sikhs-
cowardly attack, you
Yeah,
know,
Sikhs
by a
and
bloke.
Muslims with
sort of-
hijabs, because they stand out as, you know, being
Yeah.
of the East.
And
I mean,
and the
yeah.
perpetrators
So the
need
thing
to be
is, They need to be,
you know, prosecuted.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so the thing is, when you see me the way I'm dressed like the Rajani going to speak, I don't dress like that all the time. Don't worry, there'd be a lot of problems. But I dress like that with
I've seen you occasionally with a baseball cap and stuff like that as well.
Yeah. But I mean, even when I wear my turban, I don't always wear this kind of like, you know, Indian dress with the belts and the, you know, all those belts and stuff on, and all this kind of like, I look like I'm going to war. So when I jump onto a train, the looks I get is like, what is going on? Because, you know, just looking at me, I look like I'm I'm from ISIS or something like that. And it is uncomfortable. Like when you're sitting like that, you're right. But I've got quite a thick skin. But that happens also to, say, like my nephews and nieces, my nephews who have a long beard and a turban. They've said that when they've jumped into, or not jumped, but when they walked into a train, some people sometimes looking at them. Remember, when you're talking about London, the indigenous population of London probably knows the difference. But we have a lot of tourism here. So when I'm going on the train, as soon as I hit into Central, start getting Central, probably around 50% of the people jumping on the trains are probably tourists. So I'm trying to kind of like just educate people about, and I know people are going to say, oh, Raj, you're a terrible representation of a Sikh. Yes, I am. I'm not a good representation religiously, but I still have valid points about most Sikhs, even if they hate me. One thing they agree with me on is kind of like the fundamentals of, like, you know, like liberalism and, you know, freedom of religion, freedom of speech and stuff like that, no matter how religious they are. And so that's the main thing I want people to understand. So when I'm going to Speaker's Corner and saying that I believe in free speech, I'm really saying
you
that.
get into sort of geopolitical sort of theological debates on the underground train on the way in, do you?
I do. No, the problem is, if anyone wants to say hello to me in a train, don't. Because I don't like being spoken to on a train anyway, so I don't get into conversations. No, seriously, I've told people don't talk to me on trains. So I've told, and this sounds quite rude, but even if I'm with somebody, say if I'm with Banksy, I think I did it to you, Banksy, once.
No, you did it to
with
Manny
somebody.
and I think James, because I don't catch the train.
So the thing is, what I do is, like, when I go train, I don't like to talk to people. So even if I know them, I'd normally get onto different carriages and stuff like that. I know it's rude, but the thing is, on the train, like when people come up to me, I don't try and get into, like, I've had people recognize me. And I hardly make any kind of communication. I'm saying, okay, like that, and then just walk off. Because you can get yourself into a lot of trouble if you meet the wrong person. You understand? So you have to have quite a good stance of not getting into debates on trains. You understand? You can turn left pretty quick.
Yeah. This is why
I
predominantly go to Speaker's Corner with my own vehicle, because I know then I don't have to worry about that tube ride, you know, back to the house or wherever.
Yeah, because it happened to me once when I was, like, one of the worst times was I was going home, and then I was obviously dressed the way I was, and there's like two I can't remember whether they were Croatian or Serbian, but they looked like they're from Eastern Europe. And they're sitting across from me, and they're just looking at me, and they said, "Yeah, you're the guy from YouTube." And they're all big guys, and they started going, "Yeah, well, how could you keep in the? What are you going to say? What's this?" And they're trying to kind of like intimidate me. And obviously, what I did when it was my stop, I legged it. I said, "Oh, you pussy!" I legged it and ran up the stairs. And they were going, but I know.
Okay, I just want to say something. You're just like assuming that they were either Serbian or Croatian. Maybe they were, but I mean, you don't really know. You're just like saying they look Eastern Europe. What is
Hey, Raj.
do I?
Yeah.
So, hold on one second.
I just want to ask, like, you see my picture. Do I look like a Eastern European? Do I look like what does an Eastern European look like? That's what I just want to know. What do you gauge as the tall thing? Yeah, Serbians are very tall.
I will
Yeah, I
explain
mean,
to you.
Yeah, the reason
Nada.
I would say, a reason why I would say they were from there, they were definitely Muslim. They were definitely not Arab, and they were definitely
If they
not.
were if they were Muslim, they were not Serbian. I could tell you that right now. And if they
Oh,
were
all right, so
Muslim,
they
they were not Croatian either.
all right, so
Croatians and Serbians are.
all right, so let's just say they look Eastern European Muslims. So I was
Yeah.
assuming it was one of those countries that
Oh,
was
okay.
from that area. So I can't remember which one it was, but they were definitely not
Could have been from
There are no
Turkish.
Serbian
Chechnya.
Muslims. Is that what you're saying? There's no Serbian Muslims.
Not
Okay,
not
let
that I
me
know of. I've
explain you
never met
something
one.
here.
Go ahead, MC.
I don't think that Serbs would like to be called Muslim by whatever, even if they are. The Serbs that are converting or are Muslim are like the outcasts of that society, just like in Poland. If you convert to Islam or go for that religion, you are just like shunned. Even
There
by
are
own,
there are
own
no
family.
Serbs. There are no Serbs that are converting to Islam. What we're talking about, you're talking about the faction of the
I am
50%
Eastern European myself, and I
yeah,
don't know about this mentality.
in Bosnia, that's where you have like half is the
There was a
remnants of the
war
Turkish
over that
Empire.
not so long ago, especially. Why should
I
they?
Yeah, I know all about it. I know all about it. I really do.
Yeah, because I saw
Yeah.
in like Bosnia Herzegovina, there were like there were sort of Muslim there were entire areas that were.
Serbs was so brutal in that war towards the Muslims that, especially, I don't think that they would especially convert after they have lost the war over Kosovo to the.
They didn't. That's a whole other subject. That's a really detailed subject, and I could go into it in detail. But I think that'll be boring for a lot of people, to be honest with you. But I could just tell you one thing. Yeah, put it this way: Serbs are not. They're not Muslim. We could just put it that way.
Yeah, no, so but basically, just to say that, all right. So they were basically definitely Eastern European Muslims. That's all I would say. Because I didn't know the exact scene. So I know my limitations. Like, a lot of people say, "Oh, Raj, you're a coward, you're a pussy." I know my limitations. If someone's sitting in front of me, if someone's sitting in front of me on a train and I'm trapped and the guy's built like a tank and he's aggressive and there's two of them, I'm not going to start freaking mouthing off. I'll wait until I'm out of the train, I can run, and then start mouthing off. So I know to tactically retreat when I need to.
Who knows? Maybe they were converts, or they are the large minority of Serbs that. Yes.
No, he wasn't discussing Serbs, just so you know, MC. He wasn't like having a discussion about Serbs and Croatians and being on a train. He was just making an assumption that these people were from there possibly, but they were Muslim, very clear. You said they were Muslim, right, Raj?
Yeah, I said, I know where it's going, because if someone once said to me, "Oh, you're a Pakistani," and I went freaking mad. I was like, "How dare you? I'd rather be called a dog than a Pakistani."
Well,
and I know it sounds bad, but I know I wouldn't say that. But that's how annoyed I was. So I can kind of get what people are saying.
Yeah,
it's funny.
Nada, can I just ask you something? I understand that you come from a medical background.
No, I don't come from a medical background. I come from a geopolitics and also.
Sorry. I thought
and history and geopolitics.
Somebody said you were a doctor. Sorry, I misunderstood.
No.
There's a talk of somebody that's been arrested, and I was concerned about their psychological state, and I was aware that sometimes people are unwell, and they do criminal acts, and sometimes in Britain it's the government decides that person is not responsible because they're not in control of they're not fully in control of their facilities. I don't know quite how to put this, but
yeah, I mean, like their acts are like, for instance, if you murder somebody, then it would be if you're depending on your mental health, it would be construed as temporary insanity kind of thing.
Yeah,
not temporary insanity, but you're like, not temporary insanity. That's not temporary insanity. You're considered that because of your mental. That's not like temporary insanity where you like get passionate, get angry, and you do that. That's temporary insanity. But what you're talking about is somebody that has a medical condition, who has mental issues, and then because of that, they're deemed to be mentally unfit to be tried.
Yeah, I'm not in any way a medical person, so I've got to qualify this. But I mean, I sometimes heard Bob on some of the live streams, and the man didn't sound to me to be well, well. And
Yeah.
I just sort of I would like to think that in the UK that if somebody presented themselves like he seemed to be presenting himself on some of the live streams I've heard, that we would have taken a slightly different approach. Maybe I'm wrong in this, but I don't know that we would have perhaps
Well,
gone
yeah,
about
I
it the
see.
way that
I think more that what you need to understand is it's not so much that he was meant. You have to understand there's mental being insane or being having any kind of other mental deficiency. That's a pretty broad area. But in reality, what you really have is what I see is, and what I've really noticed is that, not noticed, and it's been proven, but you have a lot of people that are disenfranchised, especially like young guys, and they get disenfranchised and they need a purpose. They
incels,
need
yeah,
something. Yeah. And they get not just them, but you just get people that just feel like they need a purpose. They need something to they're basically they don't feel like they're meeting their wannabe Superman potential. So then they latch onto this, and all of a sudden it's just they're being groomed. It's like, you're great, you're wonderful. These are people that are very susceptible, and I don't know how insane he is, as he is more sort of
vulnerable.
Sounds a bit like me.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, let's bring
I
it back
don't know,
to
but
Raj.
I
Let's
don't-
bring it
you know,
back
but
to
no,
Raj.
no, no,
Yeah,
no,
sorry,
no,
we
no,
weren't
I'm-
talking about you, Raj, were we?
Yeah,
Sorry,
no,
go
but
on.
I'm being look, I'm being honest with you. Like, there is this mindset, and I've been through it as well. And you have to push yourself back from getting into that, because in today's age, the men are kind of demasculated in a lot of ways, and sometimes some of them might go over to kind of really kind of like either aggressive stuff, or go over to like groups like ISIS and stuff like that. I'm just saying, I can kind of I think a lot of men can kind of
Or to the
empathize
extreme right.
with what she was saying, or to the extreme right.
Yeah. I mean, I can imagine that there are some people that have done so stupid things. Was it Darren Osborne that drove?
Yeah.
Was he the guy that drove a van into a mosque, a crowd outside a mosque? Is that the guy? And some people have actually said that the guy wasn't. I'm not excusing his actions, but I mean, some people actually said that he wasn't the full shilling. He was two paddles short of a rowboat, or
Well, I mean, the guy drove apparently from Wales to.
I'm not excusing his actions. You understand?
Yeah.
Please.
I mean, he drove apparently from Wales to London to try to target some Muslims, and I think this was not long after the Manchester bombing. So clearly he's psychologically he was unstable, and given the events of Manchester and all that, he must have flipped. And yeah, he drove from Wales to London just to run over some Muslims, which he failed to do, by the way. He didn't actually kill anyone with his impact. What happened was someone had a heart attack from shock when he tried to run them over. I don't know whether he actually struck them or not, but the person who died, they didn't die of the injuries they sustained because of him. They simply went into cardiac arrest.
Yeah, but that's still his fault.
Oh
Because if I was
yeah. I
standing
mean,
there,
he's still held liable.
yeah,
But what I mean is,
so if someone attacks me and I'm with my elderly mother, and then something happens to my elderly mother or father, I would have blamed that person.
oh yeah,
for causing their death.
It was. He was. I think he's held for manslaughter. But what I mean is, he wasn't even capable of actually committing a murder when he wanted to commit a murder. He was that incompetent.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
That he
that's
wasn't
right.
even able to actually carry out a murder.
But I sort of, if you, I don't know if you've heard the affidavit. It was read out this afternoon on a live stream, which was really good actually. Somebody read it really, really well. A fellow called Reactionary. He did quite a good job just reading out an FBI affidavit of
Bob.
and it. Oh, well, we don't know that it's Bob. It might not.
Yeah.
be Bob.
Well, the person that done it, I've got the affidavit as well. If you want it,
I'll tell you what, it's fascinating reading because
do you want it, Banksy? I can email it to you.
You want to read it,
Yeah,
mate.
yes, please.
Because the thing is that you look at this thing and everything you've just said about Darren Osborne. It's really, really funny that this guy is just walking. He's leaving himself wide open. He's making a whole load of sort of bad decisions, and you're sort of thinking, this guy can't be fully in control of his.
No.
I'm not. Please understand, I'm not justifying what he may or he may not have done, but I'm just trying to have an intelligent conversation with you about this. It doesn't seem.
Okay, but I just want to say one thing just with this conversation. I just want to also point out, make sure that we understand that there, people attack each other there, and I'm opposed to any attacks by any people, regardless of where they're from or what's motivating them. I'm opposed to that in all aspects. But I do want to make sure that we make it clear that all the terrorist attacks that are committed in the world, is 89% of them are, maybe more, are jihadi kind of attacks. These are jihadis, these domestic jihadis from around the world that commit these attacks. So we want to be very clear on that, that it's not we're focusing in one other area, but we want to make sure that we keep our heads kind of on straight.
Yeah, I mean, I understand Boti's sort of sentiments. That I think it's just, I mean, what it really comes down to is this, or it's almost like a work of chemistry. You take a few aspects of, West is evil. You take a few aspects of you're the victim, you are being punished, you are being downtrodden, you are being oppressed, and you combine that with a religion that says, well, if someone attacks you, you are obliged morally and by your God, you are literally authorized to attack
Yeah, you're
them back.
justified. Justified by
you've
that,
got the
right?
moral justification, you've got the religious justification, then you've got a bunch of people that tell you constantly, oh, the evil of the West is purposefully trying to kill all your people.
Haven't you just described Darren Osborne?
Well, yeah, to some extent.
Everything you've said, I'm not excusing, but the thing, aren't we? You could fit that model onto Darren Osborne as well. I don't know what point I'm making, but did you see that there seems to be a pattern here?
Well,
no, the point you're making is that things are not just black and white. There is a complicated kind of a mindset of some of these guys, that some of them do have mental illness, some of them don't, some of them do. Some people are motivated by, like being radicalized by people, by seeing images and stuff. I think Bob got to the point, like, I actually think he was either a sociopath or had tendency to being a psychopath, just because of the stuff that he was able to kind of like post stuff and say. Like that, he posted one video and he kept on reposting it, that when I watched it, I still can't get it out of my head. But for him, he seemed to find it acceptable to post this video. So you've got to be of a particular mindset. So it's a combination, but ultimately, yeah, as somebody who's suffered from depression and stuff, the ultimate decision as to whether you do something is going to be your own. Yeah, and I don't think you should take that away. Like, whether you're mentally ill or not, you are still making that decision. When you're given the choice to kill someone or not to kill someone, or to rob someone or not to rob someone, your mental illness should not be used as an excuse, as an excuse to kind of forgive that or condone that.
The thing is, I don't see it as necessarily. Sure, I 100% agree. You shouldn't use it as an excuse. People still are responsible for their own actions. But what I will say is how we treat that individual afterwards, after when we capture them and treat them as and the punishments, and how we dole out their punishments. In one area, we could dole out a person who we deem to be sound mind and body. We can say, okay, this person needs to be punished, whilst the person who is not mentally sound, we can perhaps look for treatments, medical treatments. This person may not necessarily benefit from just simply being put in prison.
The terrible thing is that in many cases, people, some of the people that we're talking about can never be treated. I mean, I remember watching a Newsnight report.
I hope you hear me good.
Welcome back. I remember watching a.
Yeah, we can hear you, MC. You could talk. Maybe I'd like to hear what you have to say later on.
No worries. Let Boti land, and then we'll go to
technical difficulties.
There's a Newsnight report from 10 or 12 years ago in where they went to an Israeli prison, a high supermax security prison, where they went to and they interviewed the interrogators of a lot of the suicide bombers that had actually sort of survived. This was in Israel, and apparently a lot of the interrogators suffered breakdowns, lots and lots. It was a very common thing because they failed. You, many of the people that they were trying to work with, they just they were just they couldn't deal with them. They couldn't understand. They just see what I'm. Am I making sense to you? Like you couldn't get through the barriers that they'd actually put up. They felt so good about what they'd done that they
I'm sorry. Could you go back again? What happened exactly with these?
right. There's a BBC program called Newsnight. Yeah, years and years ago, about 10 or 15 years ago, they went to like a high security prison in Israel where they interviewed the interrogators of people that were sort of working with suicide bombers that had failed. During the Intifada, there would been a whole load of suicide bomb attacks, but some of them didn't work, and so they ended up with prisons full of. They had not prisons full. They had this particular prison with a number of prisoners in it that had been given like multiple life sentences for like sort of attempted murder, and the Israeli government just didn't know what to do with them, and they were trying to they were trying to treat them, they were trying to sort of make sense of why they'd done it. They were trying to actually find some way of working with the people, and they a lot of the people that were working for the Israelis had nervous breakdown. There was a very high churn. There was a very high turnover rate because they they weren't able to do anything. Am I making sense to you?
So you mean
And
they
I just
couldn't make any progress in rehabilitating the Muslim?
yeah. Well, we're talking about suicide bombing. Yeah, about suicide
The
bombing.
suicide attackers, they couldn't rehabilitate them. They were beyond help, if you will.
Yeah, it just struck out in my mind. I wish I could see the report again, but I just wonder with maybe I've misremembered this, and forgive me if I've got this wrong, but I just wonder with someone if you've got somebody that is extreme, and I saw Bob. I heard some of Bob's podcasts and live streams, and he did seem to me to be quite extreme to my mind, in my opinion. And I just sort of wonder what can you do with someone? How do you start with someone like that? How do you help someone like that? How can you? What do you do?
Well,
I don't know.
I mean, the thing
I
is,
don't know, man.
from my perspective, I'll be honest with you. The only way I could see them, because again, like you were making comparisons between Bob and the van driver, the van attacker at Finsbury Mosque. I forgot the guy's name.
Darren Osborne.
Darren
Yeah.
Osborne. Now, I will say that depending on Darren Osborne's religiosity or belief system, I can almost 100% guarantee you that he will find it incredibly difficult to justify Christianity with the actions that he took. It won't be impossible even through Christianity. It would be even harder if he was a Jain or if he was a
It's
Buddhist.
probably ethnicity for him, wasn't it? He's sort of British nationalism.
Yeah,
Is that
but what I mean is, through his religion, he would find it very hard to justify that action. He may be able to find it easier through ethno-nationalism or civil nationalism or any other sort of scenario like that, but he would have to have a series of moral compasses that would eventually point to that action. And if you can recognize what those things are, what those motivations are, then you can at least find some way of mitigating against it, or try to find a way of trying to explain to this individual that his actions will never solve the problems that he thinks that he's having, or that the
Yeah.
country is going through. So there are moral and ethical conversations you may be able to have with someone like Darren Osborne. I'm not entirely sure whether you can have those same conversations with a suicide attacking jihadi, because their moral compass and their moral ethical standards come from a worldview, which is his religion, which 100% justifies this for him. In fact, not only
Banksy,
justifies
you're
it,
otherizing
rewards
these.
him for
You're
this.
othering somebody. Come on, man. I mean, sorry, look, I have a lot of respect for you, but you're othering. It's like Muslims bad.
No, no, no. I'm
You
not
know,
saying Muslims bad. I'm saying that he has a to him a rational set of steps which will lead him to where he is, and he will not only be not chastised for his actions. Through his religious understanding, he is morally correct, and not only that, he's morally obligated to do what he does, and he will be rewarded for it in the hereafter. He has a set of standards, he has a set of codes of conduct which will 100% approve his actions. And so what we have to do
Yeah.
is we have to either change his mind about the fact that what he's following is incorrect, or prove or slowly and surely eradicate that mind frame from our society. We have to let everyone know that if you hold these beliefs and these ideas about how to conduct yourself amongst other British people, or non-believers, or people who are not of your faith, etc., etc., then you will face consequences for this. This is unacceptable, and at
isn't
the
that
All right.
moment
So
happening?
we don't
can
do
I
that.
ask what's the cat Santa? Was it Santa's little helper? Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
How do you think, if he was being told from a young age that even the worst kuffar, yeah, the Muslim is still better than the worst kuffar,
No, no, no.
yeah.
The Muslim is
Oh, no,
better
no,
than
the
the
worst.
best
I mean, so I'm
kuffar.
sorry, the worst. So basically,
The worst
even the
Muslim.
worst Muslim is better than the best kuffar. So that is what you call a supremacist ideology. It's like a Nazi saying, yeah, because you're white, you're better than everybody, even if you're a mass murderer. And can you not see how that would kind of, I don't know, cause issues within communities where you're living side
I
by
see what
side with different people?
I see exactly what you're saying, Raj. But Muslims, and I know Muslims, and I know. Look, if you've got somebody with, that, if you've got someone with sort of low IQ, then I can see. But I work and I live around a lot of Muslims, and I'm sure you do. And although they follow the precepts of their religion, they're they are you and they're like you and I. They I think I actually think that they're as honest and decent, and they're the same as you. They're the same
Oh,
as me.
I've not said that. I've not said that. I'm asking you the question about their mindset. If your teeth, like, if I was growing up, yeah, and as a Sikh, and I was being told that even the worst Sikh, yeah, is still better than my neighbor who's not Sikh, I'm gonna have a viewpoint of the world which is gonna be very skewed about my people being very pious compared to everyone, even when they're committing bad acts. So somebody committing a murder, that person in some Muslims, not all of them, some Muslims' eyes, is still a better person than somebody giving charity on the street, helping the poor, and basically, doing the best they can. And that is a problem. And you'll see it when you see a lot of Muslims trying to cover their brothers' sins. I mean, I've seen it firsthand with the Abu Qasim and the other issues. Like, people are attacking me. Yeah, literally, I'm going to have a lawsuit next month, I think. I think it might happen because they're using that as a way to attack me because of something that about Abu Qasim that I was proven right. So they're using something else to attack me with that. And these are what you call your moderate Muslims, people that I say they're against these extremists.
You know, look, I'm a white guy that lives in a white society, and there are a lot of assumptions that come around with that that automatically make me sort of sometimes think, you know, we have the best society. Our ideas are the best. It's really funny. I'm guilty
Well,
to.
history have proven that
I'm not
it's
better than
almost
anybody.
true.
I'm not better than anybody else. You know, but I think Western values are wonderful, and I think that
All right, so let me
Western.
ask you a
San
question.
Sure.
Is democracy, secularism, and let's say liberalism, like freedom of speech and stuff, is that a better system than Sharia?
Okay, guys, can we get MC and Nada
Sorry,
first
Yeah.
before
Yeah,
sorry,
go
yes,
on, go.
Boti?
sorry, I didn't
Because
mean to
these two guys,
dominate. But
I'm
Raj,
sorry,
sorry,
it's,
the
Well,
it
in
point,
gets
the
short,
point.
monopolized
to
very
me,
quickly.
Islam
Okay, MC, go.
is like Nazism dressed in religious clothes, and I have enough, and I would be not nicer about it, to be honest. Yes, our values and our civilization is, how to say it? Yeah, for now, it looks way better, much better than any Islamic country ever I have seen. Show me
I
one.
agree.
Show me one Islamic country that without oil is in a shithole. I cannot think of one.
But isn't that because we've exploited them? Isn't
Oh
that
yeah,
because?
exploited. Oh no, once again. You want to tell me we have exploited Turkey or we have exploited Saudi Arabia or
Well, we have exploited Saudi Arabia. I mean,
Okay, guys, sorry. Before we move to Boti, Nada, could you go for a minute or two, and then we go to Boti for some back
if
and
we
forth.
have exploited
Yeah,
Saudi
yeah.
Arabia ever, then it is doing quite well because it is one of the richest places on earth. Because oil, yes, they cannot do anything better
Okay,
from the
cool.
thing that I
Okay,
have seen.
MC, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Oh, awesome, awesome. Okay, Nada, go, and then we'll go to Boti, and I just want everyone to get a fair hearing. Go ahead, Nada.
Yeah, sure, Banksy. I mean,
How dare you? How dare you?
yeah. I just pretty much, overall, this is a lot of points have been brought up, so it's kind of vast here. But just overall, I just when I listen to Boti, Santa's little helper, AK there, I hear a man who has been taught that he seems to kind of, he's really carrying that guilt cloak. He's wearing it pretty thick. I mean, that's what I hear. I'm not saying that's what's happening. I'm just saying that's kind of what I hear, and this is pretty similar to many other people. You're not alone. But the bottom line is that there comes a point in time where we just have to stop and look at what's actually happening and address that and deal with it. And I also want to make it clear that, and I'm sure, and I assume Banksy agrees, this is not about Muslims, the people. This is about the ideology that's the issue. This is what I hate the ideology of Islam. And I always say, thank God that, most Muslims are better than Muhammad, and so it has nothing to do with that. But there comes a point. I think that you guys had touched on, mentioned slavery. People discuss that, but nobody really talks about the slavery that's still going on, that's still happening today, being propagated by Muslims in Africa, in different countries. This is still going on. Their slave trade, the Arab slave trade, never ended. I mean, it's still happening today, and nobody talks about this. They talk about stuff from hundreds centuries ago, but they don't talk about the slavery that's still going on. So, see, the problem is this happens and this continues, and it's able to go on because the focus is taken off onto something else constantly. And that's something that has to change. And I have to say it. Yeah, of course, I don't want anyone to get attacked. I don't care where you are. Naturally, of course, what your faith, your religious beliefs are, or your lack thereof. I mean, nobody should attack you for speaking your mind or just existing. I mean, that's just not okay. But we have to understand there's a huge justification that comes with Islam. It's written in their texts, that it's okay to do this. So this is their right. This is basically not just that, it's what they're called to do.
Well,
And yeah, you're going to get people that are disenfranchised, and that's when they get radicalized, and I understand this is something we have to keep our eyes open about, but we also have to really be honest with ourselves about what's going on.
In short, Quran is the Islamic Mein Kampf. Nothing to add. Well, actually, much to add because Mein Kampf makes much more sense, to be honest, Santa.
Well,
Yeah, yeah,
let's.
that was an inspiration of Hitler's. That was the Mohammedan ideology that the Islam was a partial inspiration to Mein Kampf in many ways. So that's interesting. So
Well, yeah,
yeah.
there are definitely connections between
Yes,
Hitler
we did
and the
both of
Mufti
them.
of Jerusalem. But I just want to get back to Boti and let Boti respond to some of the things that were said. One thing I wanted to just stress, Boti, my intentions are always when it comes to the people in general is I don't have any I actually consider most human beings pretty much on par with each other. We have the capability to change our minds and change our ideas. It is the ideas that I really have, what wish to confront. I don't think any Muslim is or any human being is fully incapable of absorbing new ideas. And so when I mention these things, I don't mean it as Muslims this or Muslims that. I only speak about Islam, and I know, and it has been, proven more and more these days. Muslims do change their mind. They do stop being Muslim. They do, the apostasy rates are at 23% in the United States. So for me, my only
30,
intention is to let
30%.
Muslims know that there is other options for them, that Islam is not the only option and the only code of conduct and the source for morality and ethics. And so as long as we can convey that message, then we simply have to allow Muslims to grow and recognize that they can change their mind about some of these things. That's my only intention. But anyway, go ahead, please. I know there's a lot on the table for you.
Well, no, I mean, I'm sorry, but this strikes me that this is a problem with the internet. That this seems to me, and I mean this, that this is an anti-Muslim in group. That with respect, that the thing is that everybody here is expressing views that are uh, 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 Muslim averse, Islamic averse, and it seems to me that this is one of the problems that I see on the internet is that there will be a group like this where we all sit around slagging off, you know, Muslims, and then you'll see that there's another group which is a Muslim group, and they're all slagging off, you know, society, and and then you'll get like Raspek's sort of group, and he slags off whoever he said. But it seems to me that we all, one of the danger, and what I know that Raj sort of goes from group to group to group, but one of the dangers I think that with the internet here is that all too often we spend huge amounts of time just within with groups of like-minded people just saying those nasty, evil, nasty, all the problems in society are all down to that group
Okay,
there.
Santa. Sorry to tell you that, but
No, go on, just shoot me down.
3 years of experience with living near a Muslim neighborhood in London, and frankly, if anybody is guilty of having of us having this attitude towards Islam or towards the way of life, their culture and their behavior, it's only them. It's the Muslims' fault, frankly. Unfortunately,
Well, I mean,
every culture that Islam borders with have a problem with them. That says something. Not
This
that
is
every
true. This is true.
No, no, no.
but
Let me say something. Look, yeah, I understand where you're coming from, yeah, because I've grown up with Muslims all my life, yeah, and when Muslims are secular in their beliefs and they keep their religion within their four doors, they're amazing citizens. Like I grew up 18 years of my life with only mainly Muslims in terms of Asians and a couple of white and black people as well, and at that time when I was growing up, the religion was not in people's face. It was something they practiced within their four walls, and they allowed other people to practice their religion, and they were quite respectful. What happens with people that within Islam is that when that religion starts to become what you call kind of more dominant, it cannot mix with other cultures or faiths. It has to dominate its kind of surroundings. And that's where the problems occur, because I don't want to live in I've got that video. I don't want to live in Afghanistan. I moved to the UK, not Afghanistan. And that's the truth. If it gets to a point where areas become more Islamic,
Is
it's
that
going to look
really
like
going to happen
Afghanistan.
here, though, Raj? Is that really going to happen?
Look, let me say something. If you went to India in, say, the 12th century and you said to an Indian, oh, there's only a couple of 100,000 or maybe thousands of, marauding fighters coming in from Turkey, and if you used to say to someone then, are they going to dominate us? They'll probably say no. No, but now you have three separate countries in that area, all based on religious lines. Pakistan was created because it's a Muslim country. Bangladesh was created because it's a Muslim country, and in the middle you have India. So anything's possible over time.
Well, I mean, this is my exact same thing that I can say to you, Boti. There was a time when the Iranian Revolution happened, and again, I stress this because this is within our lifetime. This is a 20th century incident. This wasn't some hundreds of years ago war with swords and shields. This was something that happened in the 20th century, in the 80s, where a country that was, for all intents and purposes, as European as you can possibly get. I can send you reams of pictures of Iran in the 70s and in the 60s, and people dressed and looked exactly the way they dressed and looked in London and in
Yeah,
you know,
it was
Paris.
a humming metropolitan.
Exactly.
It really was.
So this country with a culture and a society like that went from mini skirts and fur coats and casinos and bars to hijabs and chadors and mosques within a period of 1980 to 1984. It went that quickly. Now, fair enough, the country was already Shia Muslim. It wasn't that they introduced Islam to Iran, but the fact is that a country that had that metropolitan European mindset and living standards and conscious, they were conscious of these things, suddenly became Islamic incredibly quickly. And I'm not saying that Britain will become like that as quickly as Iran, but what I'm saying is it is not a matter of if. At the current birth rates and at the current progression of immigrants coming into this country, it is a matter of when. That is all it is. And how they did it in
Exactly.
Iran, my mom literally, when I was having a conversation with her a little while ago, and she said when they told us that we had to wear hijabs, we laughed. We thought this was ridiculous. There is no way they were going to be able to force Iranian women into wearing hijabs. We never wore hijabs. It would never happen. The women of Iran would tear the country apart before they wore hijabs. And
Nada,
they didn't come and force women into hijabs, by the way. They never came and told women you now have to wear the hijab. That's not how it started. How it started was that they told every shopkeeper that if you let a woman without a hijab into your shop, you will be fined thousands of toman, or let's say pounds, for the sake of
Nada,
British understanding.
you know your history, right? And you know about Weimar Germany, yeah?
Mm.
And you know that
Yeah.
in after the First World War, the thing is that Germany suddenly had the Weimar Republic sort of virtually imposed upon it, really, by the terms of Versailles. Because of that, what actually happened was that you had a country had this wonderful democratic system imposed upon it, and it wasn't ready for it. And there were a series of shocks to the system, including the Wall Street crash and Hitler. And then you got Hitler and you got the Nazis. The thing is I'm wondering, I don't know. I'm wondering whether in Iran, whether it's a very similar thing, that you had sort of westernization in Iran introduced to a populace that were not used to that way of that kind of society.
Well,
Therefore,
let me tell you.
on the
Sorry.
surface, it might look like Iran was fully westernized, but in fact, I mean, I don't know, Banksy. I may be wrong with this,
Yeah.
but I just wondered, as you were talking, I was wondering about the comparisons between Weimar democracy, Tehran, Iran. At the before, when
Mm.
in the time of the Shah, right? Sorry.
Well, no, I
What
mean,
do you
Yeah.
think?
I
So
can get
yeah,
that. Sorry,
yeah.
go ahead.
Banksy can tell you about that. He can tell you about that. No, Banksy, go ahead. You
No,
can
no,
go
no,
ahead
no.
and
Please,
say.
please. I've spoken too much.
Yeah, no, but yeah, what you're speaking of, I see the comparison that they're trying to make there, and I get your train of thought there, but the bottom line is it's actually Iran. Well, Iran was not. It was not a society that was having that it was this homogenous hijab wearing society, this Islamic state that had Western principles thrust upon it. Quite the contrary. It was actually a society that was evolving at a relatively normal pace, but then it went into a maybe a bit of a quicker pace. It was nothing that was really thrust. It was something that developed over time in Iran, and they were just they were industrializing. It was a beautiful thing, and the culture, everybody was very happy with
But it
it.
wasn't a mature set democracy. That's my point. The thing is if you look,
It
the
was a
thing is,
monarchy. It was a monarchy. The
but
democracy. It
but
didn't
it
It
have.
wasn't a
wasn't.
democracy.
But it wasn't. It
Yeah.
wasn't an established, set, stable democracy. Look, when Hitler rolled across Europe, right, and put the whole of Europe, under sort of the jackboot of the Nazis. The thing is that British society could have crumbled at that time. It didn't. It stood alone, and the reason why it actually withstood was because I think that it had roots. I think that it was a stability that went back hundreds of years. I might be wrong, but I think that the very strength of this country is the fact that it's a mature democracy. And I'd say the same in America. And I don't think, I think that an awful lot of Muslim people growing up in this country
Let me just tell you something,
are
Santa.
absorbing and
Let me
taking
just tell you
our
something.
values.
I want to be very clear about Iran for you, okay? Iran did not have democracy thrust upon it. Did not have the big bad West come and thrust democracy upon it. Iran had a shah. They had
Yeah, sorry, you're
a
right. Yeah.
monarchy, and they didn't have anything thrust upon them. They
Well,
No,
were
you're
a
right.
normal paced monarchy that had their own traditions, their own culture, and their own sort of developed government.
But it was
It was
westernizing. It
what
was westernizing.
okay.
uh
Let me get in on
okay,
this because
go ahead.
the situation isn't as cut clean as people think. There's two scenarios. One thing which Boti has touched upon, and he was kind of right. Iran wasn't westernized willingly entirely. There was a time where there was a Shah prior to the last Shah of Iran. There was a Shah called Reza Shah, although the final Shah that left is also called Reza Shah, but this was Reza Shah Senior, his father, who was as heavy-handed, if you like, as the Ottoman Empire, as Ataturk was when he came to secularize Turkey, because he actually really was forceful. They tore hijabs off women's heads, and to some extent that did take place in Iran at those stages where Reza Shah, the senior, was actually in charge. Now, what happened was Reza Shah the father was very heavy-handed, and he was secularizing the country somewhat forcefully, quite a bit forcefully. His son, on the other hand, was a much softer character. He was a much softer willed individual. He was educated in Switzerland. He spoke multiple languages, and he was very much more sort of inclined to go for a democracy, a sort of a British constitutional monarchy. He was much more inclined to even agree to such a thing if the Iranian people insisted upon it. But unfortunately, what happened was in 1950, I want to say 53, but I'm not entirely correct. I'm not entirely sure if I'm correct, but around the 1950s, the Iranian people actually had a revolution, and they did depose the Shah, and they installed a democratic prime minister called Mohammad Mossadegh. Mohammad Mossadegh was democratically elected, one of the first and pretty much the only democratic leaders in that part of the world, I think up until now even. And he, what he did was he decided to nationalize the Iranian oil. At the time, BP and ExxonMobil had a 99-year lease on the Iranian oil. He decided this doesn't make sense. Why should we give our oil to foreign corporations? So he nationalized it and he took it away from ExxonMobil and BP. ExxonMobil and BP were not happy with this, and so they came to the British and the American government to rectify this situation. The British government and the American CIA sent an agent by the name of Kermit Roosevelt to Iran in that period in the 1950s with $1 million to enact a coup. He was successful. He enacted the coup, and they overthrew Mohammad Mossadegh. And then they reinstated the Shah as the
They
monarch of Iran.
installed they installed it. Yeah.
Yes, and from that point onwards, the animosity for the Shah regime was instilled into the people. People knew that this king is the king of, is a puppet of the West. And so that animosity and that instance led to the 1979 revolution, in which I personally feel, and a lot of people feel, it was hijacked by the Islamists, by the mullahs. The mullahs did not come in with an absolute majority or any kind of majority, but they came in with enough support in order to hijack that revolution, because there were a lot of people jostling for power. The communists wanted it, the socialists wanted it, even there were some monarchists that were still fighting for the Shah, so on and so forth. So there was a lot of vacuum. There was a massive vacuum left, and the mullah.
Can I stop you? Can I stop you?
Yeah,
just there
I
for a
just want to
second?
say, Banksy, yeah, you're absolutely right. I just want you to know, I agree with everything that you said there, and it's actually pretty historically accurate. It's just what I've seen is that when there was the sort of the retreat back of like the Soviet influence in Iran, when that happened, when that retreated, it's like that's when you had the sort of the planting in this overthrow and these coups d'etats and everything like that. That's when you had the implanting of the sort of the Islamic State sort of influence, when that was able to come in and implant. It kind of like took advantage of the retreatment of the Soviet
Exactly.
Union, right?
Exactly.
That's what I would
took
say. Yeah.
advantage of the Soviet Union, the American influence through the Shah being revoked, pulled out of United States, the Iran. Sorry, so the United States lost their influence on Iran. The Soviets were already busy themselves with Afghanistan and other things going on there, so they had other problems. So their influence dwindled, and the gap was left for the Islamists or the mullahs to come in
look,
and fill
with
that
respect, you are comparing chalk with cheese. What you're actually sort of saying is that, look, this is what happened in Iran, and therefore it, very similar will happen here. And what I'm actually saying to you is that this is a mature, established democracy. I think that people value what we have here, regardless of anybody's background, and I think that people would want to maintain the way of life, the society, our value system, the zeitgeist, whatever in this country.
Can I ask you a question, Santa?
Go.
Yeah. First of all, do you guys speak Corner?
No.
All right, you sound like something. So let me ask you a question. If let's just say in 100 years' time, the Hindu population become like 30% of the UK, just a hypothetical. Do you believe that the Hindu population would kind of like change the UK, let's say government or its kind of laws and regulations according to its faith?
That is going to happen, isn't it? I mean, it is going to happen. I know where you're going with this, and
No.
right.
I'm saying Hindus.
It's not going to be the Hindu, is it? And I know you're right.
No, but yeah. I'm asking you: would they make? How much change do you think they would make to the overall kind of like the system of democracy and secularism and freedom of speech?
Is there a possibility that cows would
Hold on. So just tell me how much difference do you think they'll make to the UK?
I think.
Do you think it'll be a massive difference, or?
I think that there is going to be change. I believe
not from the Hindus.
No, I'm asking from the Hindus. How much do you think they would change the UK structure in terms of secularism, freedom of speech, democracy, and just freedom of religion stuff? How much do you think it would change? At 30%.
I honestly don't know. I don't know.
Just say a lot. Just say a little, a lot, a load or whatever. Just it doesn't have to be.
Probably more than a little. Probably more than a little. Yeah.
All right. So if it was, let's say, the Buddhists that suddenly become 30% of the UK, how much do you think they would change?
Yeah. And
if all right, so
yeah. Well,
so
perhaps not
if
with the Buddhists, probably a little if it was the Buddhists. Yeah.
all right, so if it was the Muslims, it become 30%, how much do you think they would change in terms of secularism, freedom of religion, freedom of speech, just generally the way the UK is? How much do you think?
Just answer, Raj. Just kind of tell him what you think.
No,
These are
I want
rhetorical
him
questions,
because
Raj.
no. I want him to answer basically, so I know where
that's
he
right.
stands.
That's what I'm saying. It's a rhetorical question. Is a rhetorical question.
I would
mean,
like-
I would like him to answer that. It's not rhetorical.
I would like to think that that we would have an inclusive society in which we all absorb each other. I look, you got me, man.
Well, this is the thing, Boti. What you said in regards to Britain having a much more mature, well-rooted democracy, you're 100% right, and it will take a lot. The scenario I described about Iran is not going to happen in the United Kingdom. I'm not saying that there will be a duplication of that scenario. 100%, you're right. It's not about the scenario in Iran. The scenario in Iran, the way I'm trying to describe it to you, is it's a warning to the rest of the world about what Islam and how Islam can come in and take over, and a 20th century situation in which once a society flipped from a perfectly open secular society, or at least secular living, to this incredibly Islamic state. But of course, Iranians were already Muslim, so that transition was tripled in speed. The thing with the United Kingdom and the Western world is that the only difference is its timing. It's not that it won't happen if the current rates of birth rates and immigration rates are the same. It's the fact that it will simply be on a much longer scale, in which when the Muslim population of the European nations reach 30%, 40%, 50%, then you will see radical changes. You will see those movements that you saw, that I'm describing in Iran, occurring at those sort of paces at that
I wonder
stage.
whether you will. I know what you're saying, and maybe you might have a point. And Raj, maybe you might have a point as well. I wonder. I look at people like Reactionary. I look at people like Safaz, and they seem to me to be. Maybe I'm wrong, but they seem to be decent people.
All right, so sorry to disturb you, but 1 minute, let me just say something. I heard something earlier today on Sir Faz's channel, and they were talking about the death penalty for blasphemy. And now M-Stax was saying that a guy called Hassan Saba, who's an Ismaili, because he said something about Prophet Muhammad should be put to death under the blasphemy laws if he was under an Islamic state. Now, you would expect someone like you saying Sir Faz to be like, no, that's wrong. You can't kill someone for blasphemy. What do you think Sir Faz's answer to that was, that, or he's kind of like his view on that?
Well, I thought that he would actually have quite an not enlightened, but I think he'd have quite a decent, balanced view. No.
All right. So he's basically answer to that was that we're not
Moderate.
under Sharia. No, we're not under Islamic State. But if we was, then fair enough. So basically, when they're in power, if he was in power, then he would say it would be okay. So that's what's very dangerous, because at the moment you would say that he's a moderate, but if they were suddenly in power, your head would. Who's got a echo?
But I just want to say something really quick, Bodhi. Bodhi, are you watching this video of these countries? Are you watching them?
Yeah. You bastards are
What do you think
grooming
about
me.
that?
You're grooming me.
But you know
bastards are making me far right.
You say that. You say that, but I'm going to tell you
joking.
something.
I'm joking.
I know. But I just want to say something really quick. I know that I've got an echo, but really quick. I just wanted to say, you say grooming like that, but you understand there's people living in these countries right now that are being ruled by Muslim guidelines, and they're saying, you bastards in the West, you're actually sitting by and you're justifying and allowing them to continue on with this foolishness. You're not letting us evolve into the societies or go back to the societies that we were. We are still subjugated under this, and you enjoy your West, you enjoy all your nice, easy amenities while we sit here under this. So the truth is, I want to say, in these countries, there are a lot of people that are different religions or atheists. I mean, they're in the closet because their life could depend on it. But they're thinking, like, how dare you sit there in the West and just justify and be okay with this, rationalize it while we sit here and suffer. And there's ex-Muslims. I work with a group called Ex-Muslims of North America. You want to talk about subjugation? You have no idea what persecution they've been through, and they are dying, and they cannot believe that someone is going around and actually saying, it's not that bad, they're okay. They're suffering too.
Well, I see what you're saying, Nada. When push, I don't know what the answer to this is, but there are millions of Banksys, there are millions of Rajes, there are millions of Nadas, there are millions of
No.
Oreses
There's only one Raj. There's only one Raj. I'm sorry.
that would actually
They are,
resist
then
any
that
kind
should be
of.
evidence enough for you. If they are, as you said, that should be evidence enough for you, to be honest.
Sorry, please say that again.
If as you're saying that there are millions of Banksys, etc., then it should be enough of an answer to you that we were right, that we are actually right, and that the demographics are very important. Not to mention that UK may have a longer and more in-rooted tradition of democracy, but it isn't invincible and it isn't indestructible, even if it would take them longer to overthrow it.
Yeah.
Have you seen that video of Adnan Rashid on Takia Watches? There's a bad echo around here, man.
Yeah, who is that?
Can you? Okay, let me mute myself.
Hello. Yeah, I think it's whoever that was.
That's me.
No, it's still there. It's still there.
Yeah, I think it's.
Oh, it's still
No,
there.
it's just because the video was playing. That's all.
Oh, okay.
That's
Okay. Let me
video.
stop the video because if the video.
Yeah,
is
do you see this,
causing-
Bodhi? You see these Coptic Christians getting
You're not going to show
beheaded?
that, are you?
No. This is Takia
No, we don't
Watches,
want to see that,
has
right?
edited this.
It's
This
just-
is
I don't want to
PG.
see somebody being killed.
This is a PG.
Yeah, but
no,
this
no,
is
no.
what
Takia
happens.
Watch
This is
doesn't.
what happens.
He's already edited all the nastiness. This is
Right.
This is semi-family friendly. It's YouTube.
So
Yeah,
what
so
was
there's a video on Takia Watches, and it's of there's still a bad echo, man. How comes it's...
No, it's a video, Raj.
Okay, I've stopped
Oh
the
yeah,
video.
hello.
Okay, can you
No,
still
it's
hear
still
the
there.
echo?
It's still there. Yeah, I can still hear it. Or is it mine?
Is it? Are you on headphones or?
Yeah, I'm on a headphone on, but it's not. It's on a headphone. Yeah, so it's not mine. Oh, it's gone now. It's gone.
It's gone?
So basically,
Yeah, I thought it was
if
a
you
video.
go to if you
It's
go
Christmas.
to
Happy
Takia.
Christmas, everybody! Yay!
Happy Christmas, happy Christmas. So if you go to
Happy
Takia
Christmas.
Watches, yeah, there's a video of a so-called moderate, let's say, a scholar called Adnan Rashid, and this is only a few years ago. Adnan Rashid is basically saying that his only purpose for being in the UK is to give dawah. That's it. Yeah, and there are a lot of Muslims I'm starting to hear recently that are saying that they're so. When you say what you here for, oh, I'm here to do dawah. That is not good enough. If you're only here within the UK to do dawah, you're not a productive member of society. Yeah, you're not going to be giving a shit about whether the UK is going to be prosperous or whether things are secure and stuff like that. So when it comes to like that kind of mentality, it's unacceptable, and a lot of people are thinking that dawah, is like a way in order to convert the indigenous population to make them the majority. I'm not saying all of them think like that, but someone like Adnan Rashid, I personally believes to make the UK an Islamic country is to do it through dawah. That's his main channel. Others want to do it forcefully. Yeah, I'm not saying he wants to do it forcefully.
Well, no. The
But
thing
doesn't
is,
it-
Raj, none of them would
Sorry.
do it forcefully now because right now they are the weak. They are the helpless. They are the minority. They
Their
can't do it
numbers,
forcefully.
the numbers in the army are not matching the goal. In other words,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, there's no way they can do it forcefully as long as they're the weak.
But
They will have to talk us into it effectively at the moment.
over time, won't Western values prevail? Won't it be the
I
case
don't think
that
they
they'll
will.
enjoy their
you know, this is the
This
this is
is
the arrogance of the Western leftists, that they think that their values are so superior that everyone
exactly.
else will like to adapt them.
No,
That's such
this is
a
true, Boti. I genuinely don't think that Western liberal secular values actually have the philosophical and the if you like the psychological
what, the
grounding.
Americans? Do you
Sorry?
think the Americans are going to put? Do you
No, no,
think
no.
Americans?
Americans are actually very Christian. Americans
Yeah,
have
that's true. Yeah, yeah,
Christianity as their anchor.
yeah.
Regular Western European secular humanist, non-religious morality and ethics and values.
Yanks don't take shit from anyone, do
Yeah, but what I mean is, I'll be honest, Boti. I've started to look into this. I started to look into the robustness of secular humanist worldviews because I consider myself a secular humanist. I consider myself a leftist. I still do,
Yeah.
even though I seem like a raging friggin' Boris
Yeah, same
Trump
here, same
supporter.
here.
But I consider myself a leftist. I like homosexual rights. I like the fact that women have the right to choose to have an abortion or not. I like healthcare. I like the social services that we have. I am for a lot of leftist, what used to be considered leftist agendas. It's just that I can't be part of the insane left because the left became nuts. And now we have to worry about whether a 6'2" man who has long hair and makeup can step into an octagon and beat the living crap out of a woman. And we have to think that's okay because he thinks he's Jessica now. This is the problem. The left became nuts. And so I had to stop. There was a line that I wasn't willing to cross anymore as far as going to the left is concerned.
yeah.
And now the Overton window has shifted to such an extent that I appear to be some sort of a raving conservative Boris and Rees Mogg supporter.
Whoa. I think the Overton window has actually changed after the election.
No, no, no. The Overton window hasn't shifted. The people's attitudes have shifted because people are fed up of the overall leftist crazy, almost Marxist ideas. So people of this country will have that line in the sand between Marxism and secular society, and they were not willing to step into Marxism because
And the
that's what
Yeah,
what's
so
called.
Banksy, you're not going to like what I'm going to say here. So the whole sit down for a minute. Now, I do believe that one of the downfalls of the West or the UK is going to be its let's just say its lack of Christianity. Let's say, yeah. And I know you're not going to like that. That's why I believe. Like when I speak to the Christians, I think they need to start
we
bringing
need
back
God.
Christianity as a glue, not as a glue. Yeah, in order to kind of unite the people, because what's happening right now is that the UK is fractured and there's nothing
We
to
need
really join
Cain.
one community to the next. Yeah, we're not Cain. Cain's too much. But I'm saying that, like, look, if most people are quite spiritual, yeah. If you take away Christianity, they're going to go somewhere. Maybe. I mean, not everyone's a demon like Banksy. So some people do need some kind of spiritual kind of, I don't know, awareness, like some kind of something to have. So they're going to be easily manipulated into say like Islam. I think, and this is the thing. Like you can drag them over. And that's why I think Christianity losing its kind of foothold in the West is going to be its downfall.
Well,
Not that I want to. Before anyone says it, wait 1 minute. I don't want to be Christian.
You're
Hold on, 1 minute.
all
1 minute. 1 minute.
wrong.
1 minute. 1 minute. I don't want to be Christian though, so don't do Dawa Christian or Christianity.
Right. In other words,
Come to Jesus,
the thing I
Raj.
want to tell us
Yeah,
is
It's
that
really
So
cool.
one at a time, guys. Okay,
Sorry,
MC
go on,
go,
please.
and then afterwards Santa.
Go on, please.
well, I'm actually very grateful that we don't have so many leftists in my own country, and frankly, especially those that are so arrogant to think that their civilization will inhalate and take in everything and just turn it into something that they want to turn it. Oh my god, really.
Uh,
The chances are slim now in Western Europe, and I am afraid, frankly, because those people maybe don't understand it, but you are putting at risk also the eastern part of Europe with your behavior. Because when those guys will take over, they will not stop there. They will be they will have appetite for the rest of this continent as well. And frankly, I want to border from the west, Eurarabia or Eurostan or whatever going to be called. I don't care, and Russia from the east.
mhm.
That would be a shit show. And to the Brits, by the way, you have a nuclear arsenal. I want to just remind you that. And when those guys are going to get their hands on it, they may put us on put us through a choice. Either way, you allowed Islamic immigration, or we will give you shrooms as a present.
Well,
What,
that
what was
there's
that? What did he
he
say?
says that he said that if Europe, Western Europe becomes an Islamic state, Islamistan, then they will give Eastern European countries like Poland, Hungary, Romania an option that you either, well, they will give you three options actually, MC. They will say you
Oh, all
either
right, I get it. I
convert to
get it. I get it.
Islam,
Yeah, yeah.
you either allow, or you either pay the jizya, or we will give you mushroom-shaped
And
clouds.
I'm sorry, I pay that
Never
bullshit to the old
nuclear
man. Sorry, I had to
annihilation.
say.
France has nuclear weapons. Britain
Yeah.
as well.
Yes. Yeah, I know. Okay.
And when they get their hands on the arsenal, holy fucking shit!
Well,
So can I say something to you, Bodhi? Look here, this doesn't look. We do not dislike Muslim people or hate them, but we know from our own experiences within our own places of home. Like Banksy knows about Iran. I know about the Punjab. That when these places become highly Islamic in terms of the population, there's normally only one or two courses of action that's going to happen. Either they're going to split off like they did in Punjab, and they had to have a separate country, which is now Pakistan, or you're going to have something like Iran, which is now an Islamic hellhole. Yeah,
pretty much.
it happens once the population gets to a certain point.
Well, I mean, in Iran, as I said, Iran was held in the secular zone by a pretty firm dictatorship, and the fact that they did actually have a moment of democracy in which, unfortunately, the British and the Americans did take a giant shit on. And now, I don't want to be the guy. I'm not the Raspex of the world who tries to blame everything on the West. It's just that that was a period in my history that occurred,
That
and
happened.
that
Yeah, that
set
happened.
other things in motion,
That
unfortunately,
definitely happened.
and it's a
Yeah,
fact of
but the
life.
difference between you and respect is this. What I've realized is respect actually thinks the white man some kind of god, because whenever I speak to him, like I'm like, okay, somebody like with the Punjab. I'm going to give my area of the world just so that you don't know I'm not being biased. The Punjab was split in half by the British. We know that because they drew the line up in a really disastrous way, which caused a lot of problems. And then people had to go from one area to the next to go from Pakistan to India if they were actually on the wrong side of the war, like the Berlin Wall, basically. And but when that happened, people started killing their neighbors. Yeah, and you're talking about 1 million people died going back and forth. Yeah, in terms of murders. No one put that sword in that person's hand. It wasn't the British that put that sword in that person's hand to kill their neighbor. They made that choice. Yeah. Either what Raspet is saying is that we are not capable of actually making that moral choice. Yeah. Or we are. And if I had a neighbor and I was living with him, and all of a sudden London was split down the middle, and I had to go to the other side, and I killed my neighbor, I have to be held responsible for killing my neighbor, not the person who made the split. Is that mad? I don't know. I think it's with respect. It almost feels like he blames the white man for literally
Well, yeah,
every
yeah.
single thing.
Respect has a giant chip on his shoulder, and he blames every facet of the failure that is his life on someone else because he is incapable of accepting his own failures that were brought about by his own actions. He thinks that the failures that he feels in life are somehow rooted in the fact that his ancestors at some point somewhere, which we don't even know for sure. He only claims that his ancestors were slaves at some point. We can't even really verify that he actually descends from any kind of person who was a slave. But I'm just taking him by his word. So he thinks every failure in his life is rooted in that period of history. and that him and his descendants since have had no possible option to come out of poverty or destitute or whatever he finds himself. Although he actually lives a pretty okay life. He's living pretty well. He's wearing good clothes and he's eating well. He doesn't look like he's starving. He might have slight upper lip hair issues, but that's nothing but a razor could solve. But other than that, he's generally not living a terribly bad life compared to his African descendants who are still in Africa, who are actually suffering, who are actually starving, who have to give, petri dish bacteria filled water to their children. He doesn't seem to, beat his chest about them in any time soon. He's not particularly worried about the Somalis macheteing villages to death. No, no, no. It's the white man's fault. It's the run devil man, run devil man. That's the problem.
But people, yeah, with respect, people, look, the thing is that your dealings with him, I think that he has a lot of affection for Raj. The thing is that it's theatrics, that it seems to me that an awful lot of the things you see with Respect and the things you see with Raj and the things you see with Banksy is like it's like a bigger, it's a theatrical Raj. It's
No,
a
I
theatrical
really hate him. No, there's no theatricals about
No,
it. I
you
hate
don't.
the
Look,
guy.
you're
No,
doing
no,
it
I
now.
don't. No, let me
No,
say
you
something.
don't.
Acting
I
here.
don't. When it does come to Respect, it is a bit of theatrics. I kind of enjoy the silliness of it. It's never really gone too what I call kind of too nasty. It has with Banksy between them, and so. But with other people, I truly do hate certain people. But with him, it's not really hate. I just like to kind of like expose the fact that he's not really
Live action role
righteous or.
play.
Yeah, he's not actually. It sounds a bit kinky that way, so don't say that, please. So basically,
Sorry. Sorry.
yeah, it's like me. Yeah, don't say that again, because so basically,
Laughing.
with him, like, look, look, what it is here with the Respect is like, look, if you say to everybody, "I'm righteous and I'm on the truth," and then I'm constantly seeing lots of things that are unrighteous and not on the truth, then I think I have a right to call him up on it. Banksy doesn't say he's righteous. I don't say I'm righteous. Lots of people don't say that. So you can't hold us to the same standards. And this is the problem I have with Raspberry. Just admit you're not righteous. You're in it for the money a lot of times. And you hate your cult. He's got a little cult going on there. Most of them he probably hates. But he has to pretend he likes them.
I mean, when it comes to my interactions with him, I simply smell bullshit when I see it. I see a player playing a bunch of naive people like Bob, actually, Boaty. When you talk about vulnerable people like Bob, I think someone like Respect actually takes advantage of someone like that, who feeds him this narrative of how evil and terrible the West is. He plays his part in creating someone like Bob too. He is not absolved from that. When you spin a narrative of bigotry and hate and this race baiting all the time, you are creating Bobs, because you are constantly telling them your life would be so much better if it wasn't for these evil white devils here. And what do you think someone like Bob, who's already weak in his mind or in his in his thinking and his mentality, he's already has cognitive issues. He's not going to sit and go,
Yeah.
I can see this guy's race baiting me. I can see this guy's doing it for the PayPal.
I just want to say that Bodhi, Santa's little helper, I just really encourage you to sort of look at the other side of the issues, and just I think that everybody should have a very you should learn both sides, not just things that you find you're averted to. You should learn things that that you agree with, and also that you don't. But ultimately, I really do encourage you to check out Takia Watch TV and check out those videos, and you'll maybe gain a different perspective that'll give you some deeper understanding.
Absolutely. And one thing I want to constantly stress, I am in no way, because this is something that I don't know. I don't know how many times I have to stress it. I have a friend of mine who I consider almost as close to me as my
Sorry, I'm
brother.
back. I just had to go and
Oh, sorry.
drain the swamp.
Who's coming to Christmas dinner tomorrow night with me and my mum and my family. He is Palestinian. He is very much Muslim. He may not be a full-time Muslim. Maybe he does an occasional tequila shot with me. But nevertheless, he and his family consider themselves Muslim. And when I go out with my crew, it's like the OPEC nations. We've got Syrians, Algerians, Egyptians, Moroccans, guys from Arab Emirate, Dubai, Kurds from Iraq. This is the people I hang out with. These are the soup I swim in. I don't hang out with just white or Ralph-minded people. Ralph and that sort of crowd is an enigma to me. This is
And
anomalies.
will those people want a caliphate? I mean, will those people want UK caliphate?
This is
No,
the
they
thing.
won't.
This is what I will tell
What
you.
they're going to want a modern Western country.
I will tell you this, Boti. If the scenario happens where the fanatics take over, people like Jordan M., people like my own friends, they may not necessarily be on the front lines of the revolution, but they will stand on the sidelines while someone like Bob puts a sword to my neck and says, you either see the light of Allah in the reflection of my sword, or you will get my sword. And Jordan M's and the Hamster Hamsters,
Really?
they'll be standing in the sidelines and they won't say
Really?
a word.
Yeah. All right. So let me. The conversation I had earlier, the reaction was he was asking me, and this is kind of in line with Banksy. He was asking me, what would which one is worse, the American government or ISIS? And to me, ISIS is much worse. And I was trying to think as to why he believes the U.S. government is, because under ISIS, I would have my head chopped off or I'd have to convert. Yeah. For him as a Muslim, the worst that would probably happen is that they would probably give him some stick. And if he doesn't conform to their kind of orthodox version of Islam, then he will be in a bit of stick. So to him, yeah, most people, Muslims, would actually just conform to the norm, yeah, and watch how barbarity happens around them.
Yes.
That's just the way. I'm not just talking about Muslims. I'm talking about people in general. You'll see it with the Nazis. You see it with the communists. It's happened around the world. So yes, they would. If they were in the majority and it was between their family and protecting someone else, they would probably think selfishly, like most people do, and protect their own family and watch atrocities as they're going around them. That's a
happened
fact.
in Nazi Germany. Yeah, no, I
That's
see
what
what
I'm
you're
saying. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, and it happened in communist
way-
Russia as well.
Yeah.
Exactly. This is what I fear. I don't fear the
Conformist.
moderate Muslim for the fact that he will come and kill me, but I will know. It's not even a fear. It's not even a guess. I will know that they will stand silently whilst a Bob or a M Stacks or even Sir Faz will put a sword to my neck and will tell me that I should be taking my shahada. That's the difference. They may
Yeah,
not be the
they'll be-
ones who
they'll-
will
they'll-
like
oppress
tell
me.
you a similar story with me. I can.
Yeah,
tell a
they'll be
similar story.
complicit. They won't sit there. They're not going to be the ones instigating or run or carrying out these acts, but they'll be complicit in the fact that they're just not going to say anything, like you said. They're not going to.
Yeah. And let me just
stop
put the
That's
caveat
the
that.
moment,
Let me just.
add my story about my own country now.
Yeah, okay.
Listen,
Yeah,
most-
go ahead. I'd
Go
like
ahead,
to hear.
MC, and Raj, just give him
most
a minute.
most followers, as you know, are devoted Catholics, and not. I mean, they think they are. They're like something in the middle, but still.
MC,
because
could you
of
get a
the
bit closer to
fact
your mic, please?
Okay, now
Joe
And
Rogan.
what
Much better.
what country are you speaking about again?
Poland.
Which country? Poland. Okay, go ahead.
Well, as almost everybody knows, Polish people mostly are Catholics. 90-something% of the population. They are to this or another level devoted. But there's one thing that gives it a similarity to Iran and other Muslim countries like that. The similarity is that when today is the government, and especially when the church is doing its fuckery with its pedophilia problem in its institution, when not all priests, of course, are fucking children, but many of them are just protecting the ones that do, and the population is like instead of making a massive protest against it, aborting or boycotting churches, no, they are afraid. They are not saying anything. doing nothing because they're afraid what the others will say, instead of being bold and saying no, enough of this shit. Even families with children, they are in my country right now, that are telling those their own sons, their own daughters, don't say anything. We will have problems because of that. But please don't say anything that you have been fucked by this priest. Don't say it didn't happen. Didn't happen. That's what they are hearing in this country. And I don't think that when the Muslim population in Britain will grow extensively, it'll be something different. No, it'll be even worse, because they have in their scriptures, because their prophet was love children deeply. Yes, I am saying that with nasty religion.
Yes, he loved the young ones deeply.
And not only children who suffer, but also animals and everything that lives under that system. And we have to oppose that at all costs. And I mean, not violence, not at least.
Well, at all costs is
We
violence,
can
old
avoid
chap.
it. Do everything to make it difficult
Look,
for for Islam to grow in any country.
the one
I
thing
agree. I
one
agree.
the one thing I will say, this is what Sam Harris wrote in his book, The End of Faith. He says we either have to win the debate or we'll have to win the war. And at this point, we're at the stage of debate. We can push back with our speech, with our debate. Of course, again, another famous atheist, Christopher Hitchens, also pointed out that the very right to complain is being taken away from us every day, and it is being taken away from us every day because the very notion of Islamophobia has been introduced into the psyche of the population, as if that is somehow racism to criticize Islam. So these things are being introduced all over the Western
Yeah,
world.
yeah.
Hate speech
Can I
laws.
say a bit after you?
Sorry, go ahead, Raj.
And I,
Sorry.
yeah. So I was going to say before, just a caveat. When I'm saying that, Muslims would watch idly by, I'm not talking about Muslims. I'm talking about people. You will see throughout history that people have committed the worst atrocities in the name of religion or some kind of ideology, and most people, yeah, rightly or wrongly, are very selfish in their nature, and they'll think about their own safety and their families. I'm not saying that's right or wrong, but that was what would happen. So they're not very few people put their head.
Oh, sorry, my bad. I changed something. Hold on. Okay, okay, we're back. I do apologize, ladies and gentlemen. Go ahead,
Nada,
guys,
you were
talk.
saying.
Yeah.
What were you
Do
saying?
you want to repeat what you said, Raj? Did they hear Raj what he said?
Up to about
Well,
30%, but go ahead again, Raj, because I'm
yeah,
sorry,
so
I had to go
I'll just say
toilet.
the end. I'll just say the end bit, which is that there's certain things that are changing slowly. Like when I was younger, all of us used to exchange Christmas cards and, say Happy Christmas, whether you was Muslim, Hindu, Sikh, Christian, or whatever. And that was a way, not because we believed in, no offense, we're not Christians, but it was a way of kind of like, integrating and like, ingratiating yourself with your neighbors by, looking at the custom and saying Happy Christmas. Yeah. Now you have a situation where in the UK, it's now being changed to Happy Holiday. And on top of that, you'll have a lot of Muslims that literally will not reply to a Happy Christmas. Yeah. And they will refuse to do it because they feel it's against their religion. Yeah, and that little things like that are problematic. You may not see it as a big thing, but you will see that it will, if it keeps increasing to other areas of, let's just say their religion, and it starts encroaching in other ways, it will become more problematic long term.
Yeah, exactly. And so, like, what I just want to add to that is like little things. I had mentioned Bill Warner, and I suggest checking him out about political Islam. And I've spoken about this before. It's very subtle, and it's meant to be subtle, but well, there's things that aren't subtle and things that aren't. But basically, like for instance, in my kids' school, we have dishes that the kids like for this like little holiday breakfast. Of course, it's no talks about Christmas. It's all winter this and holiday that. But okay, aside from that, we have this where we make this thing, and it was actually like this breakfast sort of like quiche kind of thing. It's basically like eggs and sausage in there, okay, and with shredded cheese on top. And because of this very small percentage of Muslim students, we had to take that off the menu, and the kids really liked it because it had no pork products are allowed now in the school when you're having these types of things. And what I wanted to say is that, like, yeah, over so many years, we have a very high percentage. Probably 30% of the students are from India, and they are like Hindu, and there are a few Sikhs and things like that. And you have Jews, and obviously dominated by Christians, obviously people that are atheists and all kinds of stuff, children of atheists, all that. But nobody ever said a thing about what we had on the menu. If they didn't eat pork, they just didn't eat the pork. If we had dishes that had beef in them, the Hindus just didn't eat it. Nobody made anybody change something to accommodate them, let alone ban something. And see, it's just these very subtle nuances that start to happen, which then end up translating into something larger. And that's exactly what happens.
Peeps, we are sitting here moaning about Muslims. That's what we're doing here. We're just sitting here sort of beating down on Muslims. And
No.
I
want to be clear. I'm not
do it. They deserve it, to be honest, with their imposing behavior.
I am not moaning about Muslims. I'm not moaning. This is something I've done for. I've worked. Okay, I don't want to go back in my background and all that again. But anyway, just what I'm talking about is the ideology of Islam. And just so you know, Bodhi, Santa's little helper, I just want you to know something. There are plenty of people who have been born into culturally Muslim families, and they are suffering as well, like the ex-Muslims of North America, that organization. And they have a huge issue with this. They have a huge issue with this Sharia type of thing that's being implemented and pushed in the West, and they want it out of their country. So just so you know, this is not about moaning about Muslims. I love Muslims. They're my brothers and sisters in humanity. That has nothing to do with this. This is about the subjugative and it's not even about their religion, their faith. It's about the Sharia law and the push of that, and how it subjugates people and how it subjugates other nations as well. That's what I'm talking about.
But we're also, forgive me. Look, you're all good people. Forgive me, but but look. We're all, there's like glass half empty, glass half full. And the thing is that all the way through it was, and that's another thing, and then another thing, and then there's this, and then there's that. And we're tending to sort of just concentrate on negative. And it seems to me that, Mac actually sort of mentioned about Catholics and the way that Catholics, bad things have happened in Poland because of the Catholic Church, and I'm reminded of Ireland, where pretty much everything that he said seemed to be the case in Ireland in the 80s and then the 90s, and then they came to light, and there's been a complete change. And the
So,
thing is that please just let
Yeah,
me finish
okay.
with it. Yeah. The thing is that what's actually happened in Ireland is that people actually did exactly as you said, that people actually sort of kept their mouth shut. People conformed. People allowed it all to happen. There was terrible abuse by the Catholic Church in Ireland, and then eventually something snapped. And people just said, "Sod this! We're not having this anymore. This has got to stop." And the Catholic Church had to utterly change. Exactly the same thing happened in America, right? Where I understand to the point where the Catholic Church is having trouble being economically viable because it's getting so many sort of legal actions, right? The thing is that my point is that I think that people in the West have sort of tolerances, they have balances that they will struggle to maintain. They will really try to keep certain ways of being, like Western standards. And I can't see the West just rolling over and allowing the world to change. They will incorporate, they will absorb, they will make little small changes that sort of allow, okay, in school dining rooms we'll have halal, but it's not going to go to, it will be a
Well,
question of
All right,
this is
okay.
accommodating
can
other
I
Well,
people,
can I just respond to
accommodating
you for one
people,
second?
tolerating other people.
yeah, but
hey,
Yeah, can I just respond? Can I just say one thing to you? Yeah, look, yeah. Now I understand where you're coming from. I can see from an outside perspective, it looks like we're just rambling and things. But the thing is, sometimes if you talk about things, people can kind of like some of the Muslims that are listening to this can take it on board and say, okay, maybe this kind of stuff here that might be trying to impose in the future, maybe we might need to start changing our mind and like start to kind of accommodate ourselves to the host nation rather than to impose our ways on the host nation. The other thing is about the halal meat. I'm going to give you an example of how one religion is imposing their beliefs on another religion. Yeah. Now, when it comes to halal meat, yeah, the Sikhs. Did you know Sikhs? Yeah, we're supposed to be vegetarians, but Sikhs that do eat meat, it is forbidden. It's one of the worst sins to eat halal meat. Yeah, in Sikhism. It's in our scriptures. Now, if the Sikhs really wanted to start getting a bit silly about this, or let's just say using their religious beliefs, we could say that the Muslim community is actually encroaching on our beliefs because they're forcing halal meat willy nilly around the whole UK and not telling people where it is and where it isn't. Can you see? Like we could start doing that as well.
Particularly, Raj, particularly how halal meat is prepared, then how
Yeah,
horrific it is for
that's why
being.
it's forbidden. That's why it's forbidden. No, it's not forbidden in the culture. It's in our Sikh scriptures. You cannot eat halal meat. You cannot eat it. And we could go around going, okay,
Why
you
not?
forced it into the because we believe the way that we're supposed to be vegetarians, but if you do eat meat, we believe the way it's slaughtered in the sense that you cut it from below slowly upwards is barbaric. Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
It
cruel
is. It's
way to do it.
disgusting. It's disgusting.
And
If you have
so
any
for me,
emotion for animals, it's disgusting.
yeah, so for us here as Sikhs here, we could, if we really wanted to, do the same thing and go, okay, the Muslims have now encroached on our beliefs. But we understand that look, we're not that type of people. We just don't
well,
eat the meat.
this is something I wanted to just point out now. Boti, I accept. This is the thing. I do see your particular point of view. I accept the fact that the Sikhs made some requests as far as the headwear is concerned, and so in Britain we made laws to say, okay, motorcycle riders that are Sikh don't have to
Crash
wear
helmets.
crash helmets. So we made
Yeah.
that concession for the Sikhs. Fair enough.
Tolerate.
We made
Yeah.
concessions for the Jews. They wanted to have a thing called the Beth Din, which is effectively Jewish Old Testament court, and we allowed them to have it. And so we made concessions there. There are kosher meat stores. We made concessions there. Although kosher meat and the Jews have never requested for that to be served in public or should I say state schools in the UK. They kept, if they were going to feed their children kosher, they either gave them their own lunch or they sent them to Jewish only schools, etc., etc. So the Jews found ways of sort of looking after their own community without encroaching upon the wider society if they had if they wanted to adhere to their strict rules. The Muslims, on
Yeah,
the other
exactly,
hand,
Banksy. Sorry, really quick. Sorry to interrupt, but then also what you're saying exactly. Just like the Sikhs, with the helmet crash helmet thing, they didn't say now no everybody has to go without
that's
crash
right.
helmet. None of this was thrust on the other people. It didn't affect the other people
Yeah,
personally. It didn't affect them. That's all. Sorry about
yeah,
that.
that's true. They only got the exception for
Forgive me,
themselves.
but that's a false analogy, because they're not actually saying every woman must be forced to wear a headdress or
No, no, but they
a
are
like a
saying that
covering. So,
this.
forgive me. Sorry.
No, no, you're right. You're right. As I said, these are the things that I'm saying. Is that what happened with the Muslims? And this is somewhat the British people, the British government's fault, not necessarily the Muslims' fault even. The Muslims used the Beth Din of the Jews to get Sharia courts. Now we allowed the Jews to have the Beth Dins, and so we had to allow the Muslims to have Sharia courts. We allowed the Jews to sell kosher meat, so we had to allow the
But
Muslims to
but
sell halal meat.
you're not subject to a Sharia court,
No, no,
and
well,
neither am I.
it all depends. There is a case that can be made that the women who are living in Muslim communities are coerced into using Sharia courts rather than British courts.
They can.
Exactly.
Just a minute. They can actually turn around. Hello.
No, no, oh no, they can. But what I mean is, there's a case to be made that they are coerced and sort of
They
pressured.
can actually say, "I demand a civil court."
Oh
Oh,
yeah,
hold on. But let me tell you something to you. You have to understand when a Muslim, yeah, believes that the laws of the Sharia courts are from God.
yeah,
Even if the ruling goes against them, they will not go for the say the UK
secular.
law,
Yeah,
even if it benefits them, because they believe it's a fake law. It's not from God.
yeah,
So
it's
they would
man's law.
rather accept that. They would, and there's so many cases of women. I'm like, dude, like they've taken their kids away or whatever, so they've got a bad ruling. I'm like, you could just go to the main court of the UK judicial system and actually get your kids back and stuff. And they don't use it because they believe those courts are from God. And until you understand that, you won't
Well,
understand why these Sharia courts can lead to a
yeah.
really dangerous road of a two-tier legal
Well,
system.
the thing is, I didn't want to go into this. What I wanted to explain is that these issues that we're having with Islam, they are not purely Muslims' own fault. Some of it is the British government's capitulation to the request that the Muslims made, and we capitulated. We gave in. If we simply said no, the Muslims wouldn't have any, foot to stand on to then pressure our secular societies to adhere to them. This is on most of this at this stage of our social evolution and our social cohabitation with Islam. At this stage, we still hold the upper hand. We still hold the whip hand over Muslims in this society because we are still the kuffars are still the majority. And unfortunately, it is the left. It is the over accommodating left, far left, that is causing this problems that we're having with Islam. Because if we drew certain lines in the sand and said, no, I'm sorry, but a secular school will not adhere to a religious dietary habit. If Muslims have dietary habits, then they have to provide for themselves their own food. The school is a secular school, and we firmly hold that we cater to all children of all religions. And if Muslims cannot take part, just like the Jews, they have to segregate themselves effectively
If you
when
were
it
in
comes to
France,
lunch.
Banksy, if you were in France, that is how things would be. They'd actually
Yeah,
say, "You believe you leave your religion at the gates of the school."
yes,
Right? In Britain, we tolerance.
yeah,
We tolerate and try and absorb and try and incorporate
and that was a
and
bad thing.
allow. And I mean, surely that's our way, and
No, that
it's
was a
served us.
mistake. That was a mistake that
Is
the
it a
British
mistake?
government
Hey,
made.
I'm sorry. Sorry to
Is it
interrupt.
so important? Sorry, go on, Nada.
Sorry to interrupt. I'm going to be really quick. I just wanted to say, actually, I have to get going. Christmas, ho ho ho. It's not Christmas here yet, but I have to start wrapping gifts. And I'm sorry, excuse me, Santa's got to bring some gifts,
Yeah.
and we have to get that ready and everything like that. So I have to get going. It's been great talking to you guys, and of course, Raj, great talking to you too. And
Yeah.
I wanted to say, Banksy, hope you always love talking with you, and
Yes.
look forward to doing this again very soon. And also look out for look out for Takia Watch TV and whatever we have upcoming. We always, I always look forward to you being on the stream, definitely. And Raj, you too, stop on by, and I'll talk to you guys later. And have a Merry Christmas, guys.
Will
And
do.
Happy
You
New
Merry
Year.
Christmas. Merry
You too.
Christmas.
Merry
Happy New
Christmas.
Year.
All right, take care.
Take care.
Okay.
Actually, what was I going to say?
Is it such an important thing? Is it? Why can't we just allow them to have halal food? I mean, why
No,
is
no,
that
no.
important?
It's not about halal. It's not about Sharia courts. It's not about women wearing niqabs. This is all about the slow boiling frog syndrome. The fact is that it's as you keep giving in one thing after another, eventually there'll come a time where there will be a line in the sand in which you no longer wish to cross, but it's too late because there's no one left to protect you or stand up for you because you capitulated so much along the way that those people like me or Raj, we had our lines in the sand and they kept getting crossed, and you kept saying, well, that's okay, that's just halal food, that's okay, that's just this, that's okay, that's just Sharia courts. And then when it comes to your line in the sand, none of us will be left to actually back you up anymore, and then you'll realize, oh shit, maybe this was too late. The point is, I would rather address Muslims' issues in Britain when it comes to halal food and draw the line at that particular point than to have to worry about whether I should put a hijab on my daughter or my wife before she can step out of the front door. I don't want
All,
that to be my line to cross.
all of
That's not
these
where
are
I want to pull that line. I want to pull it at the halal and the Sharia courts, because eventually it will get to when they ask your wife and your daughter to put on a hijab before they go out.
all of these arguments were made about the Catholics in the 1830s. Very, very similar sort of arguments, right? But if we give them a bit of headway, if we start allowing them to set up churches again in Protestant Britain, right, then before you know it, the whole country is going to be, Roman Catholic, and it's going to be ruled from Rome. They said that about John F. Kennedy, that a lot of people actually said if you get John F. Kennedy, if John F. Kennedy becomes president of the United States, then America is just going to go Catholic, right? And you might be right, Banksy, and I honestly don't know. I'm not the brightest. You are infinitely more intelligent than me, genuinely,
No,
right?
no.
And Raj. But the
And
thing,
me, I know you're lying now.
no.
No,
Come
but
on,
I
Raj.
don't
Come on,
think so.
Yeah, you're lying. You're lying.
no,
Now.
you're a pretty smart guy, man. No, I have a lot of respect for you, man. But I don't agree with you always, but I
Yeah, that's
enormous
fine.
amount of respect. But the
Well,
thing is,
I respect that more because I don't want yes men like Horsey does. He just likes everyone to say yes, yes, yes. I like to be challenged on my views. Yeah,
Yeah, no,
because that's the best way to
absolutely. I
progress.
100% welcome the pushback, because there should be a conversation. But for me, the number one thing is there should be a conversation. Those who say that we shouldn't even talk about this are the ones I fear even more than yourself, Santa.
but don't you sort of see that there's a danger that we all sit around bitching about quotes, the Muslim problem. You know what I mean?
I
I'm not saying
agree.
that there's a Muslim problem,
I agree
and
that there
there's a
may
great,
be a hyperbolic
but
sense to
in
this. Maybe we're
that it sort of
exaggerating
makes
some of
things
these.
worse. That this, I'm not saying that there is, but I'm sort of, but it makes this kind of discussion makes things worse.
I don't think
Am I
so.
I,
wrong?
I, I, I wouldn't actually agree with this. Now the thing is, look, if we don't talk about it right now, when things are not got out of control, then in around 30, 40 years time, then you start talking about it. Then there's no way to even try and resolve the issue. You would have got past the point of no return. The reason why I think it's good to talk about it now, and it is quite a contentious issue, is that the people that are listening, like the Muslims and stuff like that, might start reevaluating some of the stuff that they are trying to kind of impose on the wider community. And I believe that you should not restrict people's religion, but it must stay within their household, in the sense that they shouldn't be trying to kind of impose it on the wider community. Do you understand?
Yes, I do. Go on.
Boti, I'll give you a clear, precise example of why conversation and pushback has changed behaviors of Muslims. and the most clear example that I know of is the prayer that the Muslims were doing at Speaker's Corner. For the longest time, Muslims had no pushback against them violating blatantly the park rules of communal prayer in Speaker's Corner, to the extent in which they were doing it right in the middle of where the speakers would normally stand to speak. So they were literally occupying Speaker's Corner and dominating it for themselves, and clearly sending out a signal: this is our space. We rule this place.
There's
Until
a great
I mean,
people,
it was actually worse than that. When I first went there before you come, Banksy, they used to have Zachariah used to do the for like 15, 20 minutes would stand in the middle of Speaker's Corner and do the call to prayer. I don't know what that is, and it lasts
yeah,
like 15,
Azan,
20 minutes.
yeah,
And and nobody, we couldn't talk, we couldn't do nothing, and literally every conversation around was actually being disturbed by this. And at that time, and it sounds quite weird now because I don't think you can get away with it was totally normal.
there you go.
Yeah, I
Until
remember just
pushback
walking around.
began. Until
Yeah, I just remember walking around. Yeah, and I just remember walking and going, okay, this is the time that he does that, and we got to just kind of like try and walk away. And now looking back at it, I'm like, dude, that was insane that we allowed that to happen.
exactly.
You know that there's quite a head of steam to bring that back, don't you? A big head of steam to bring that back.
Well, they can
You know
try,
that.
but then there will be people who will now push back hard. So they know they'll have opposition to this. And that's what we have to make sure Muslims know that they have, is that there will be opposition to their encroachment upon the social space, the space in which we're all part of. This is not their space. This is not something they're going to dominate. This country is not somewhere that they have free reign to dominate and impose their will.
And the thing is, look here, this is going to sound quite rude, but I'm pretty straight with you. Now, if the Islam in its nature, when it comes to a country, it benefits the country and actually pushes it forwards, I'd have no issue. I'd welcome it and go, okay, that's a good idea. That's a good idea. But there's no doubt about it. The Islamic, when Islam comes into countries, it pushes it backwards. It will actually take you backwards in a lot of ways. It's like going from a Ferrari to a skateboard. Yeah, it doesn't make sense. Yeah, so no one's against move and like kind of incorporating things from different cultures and different places. But when it's actually to a detriment of pushing yourself forwards and progressing, then I don't think anyone should accept that. And you cannot, if you really think within your own heart and really ask yourself the question, is Islam in its kind of entirety a benefit or a negative to a host nation like the UK? You would say it's a negative.
Sajid Javid, the Chancellor of the Exchequer, the Home Secretary, previously the Home Secretary, I think. The thing is that he happens to be a Muslim. Now, you just don't know that he was, or you just don't know that he's a Muslim. He wasn't given the job because he was a Muslim of Home Secretary or Chancellor of the Exchequer. He was given the job because he's an incredibly intelligent man, and his religion doesn't rule his position. We don't think we've got a Muslim Chancellor of the Exchequer. We've got a Chancellor of the Exchequer who happens to be a Muslim.
Absolutely.
Do you know Sajid Javid? Yeah, but Sajid Javid is hated by most Muslims. They don't. I don't even think he classifies himself as a Muslim no more.
Because I give Sajid a massive credit for what he did when he was Home Secretary, and the Shamima Bingham thing. I was incredibly shocked that it was him who took her passport away before anyone else. In fact, if a liberal lefty Corbynite would probably welcome Shamima Begum.
There you go. That sinks both of your ships.
No, you're right. You can find anomalies in every situation, but I don't consider Sajid Javid to be the normal Muslim.
Is that the bald? Is that the bald guy?
Yeah, the bald chap.
Yes,
the bald
yes,
chap.
it is.
Oh
Yes.
yeah. If it's him, no, he's actually probably an atheist or at
Well,
least an agnostic. He
How
doesn't
do
be
you know
classified.
it's
that,
not. I mean, he
Raj?
may
Well,
not. He
dude,
may. He may.
look at him. Look at him.
He's a chocolate Muslim, that's for sure. He's a watered
Oh,
down cherry
how
picker.
can you say that? You don't
No,
listen.
no,
How
he
do you
is.
know?
He is. He's definitely.
No.
I promise you.
I'm pretty sure, and I have to look into
I'm
that. I
pretty
remember.
sure.
No, I can Google him now actually, but
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure from before because I've not seen it like that. He's actually not in any way, shape, or form can be considered to be even a liberal Muslim. He's actually like a proper
No, he's a
what you
chocolate
call
Muslim
almost
as at best. He's
more
a
than a chocolate,
yeah.
more than a
You know what I mean?
chocolate.
He's like a Milky Way Muslim.
No,
Yeah.
but there's my point. That's my point, people. That's the point that I'm actually
Yeah.
making. I think that he is a shining beacon of hope because you've got. I think that there's an increasing number of people who are highly educated Muslims who are being absorbed into society and they're maintaining their faith, their belief, but they're being productive members of society that have made this country better. You know,
I mean, I hope.
Yeah, and those are the people that we
they're not
want
an
to
exception.
encourage.
Yep.
They're not
No,
an
those are
exception.
the people. Those are the people we want to encourage.
Yeah,
Those are the
absolutely.
people
But
that we
Boti,
want to promote. Yeah, and it's the people. Now the problem with your argument is this: is that you're picking out one individual that obviously is a good example to your argument, but I can name you thousands of others that are in the public limelight, or just
yes.
generally like people that I know are the
Well,
total opposite to what
the
you would consider to be
the
productive.
Yeah,
numerous numbers of Labour MPs who were found, Muslim MPs who were found with severe anti-Semitic comments because of their support for Palestine, and the people like Galloway who marches on Al Quds Day, who are absolute traitors to this country. I can.
but I think both. Sorry, Boti. What am I saying? Boti. I mean,
Banksy.
Banksy. There's a. You see, the thing is I think that hits on another issue. The thing is, if you look at the left, what's happened is that there's a lot of people in the left who talk about inclusion, who talk about compassion, and in fact, they are the most exclusive people. They are the most inconsiderate people. You know what I mean? I mean, I don't think that's restricted to people who happen to be Muslims. I
No.
think that there are all sorts of people in the Labour Party who talk a good game. They talk about who talk about being inclusive, who talk about let's have everybody, open borders, let's all be but in fact they are very dismissive. They are very, very offensive about sort of white working class people. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They're very disdainful of the stupid white working class people.
Banksy, I need to shoot, yeah,
No
but
worries.
thanks for doing the show, man.
It's all
But
good.
look, you seem like a good guy, Santa. Yeah, make sure you bring me a nice little present. Yeah, but the thing is you're being like, look, I appreciate people coming in and trying to see the good side of things, and I do agree with you.
Well, it's
There is a kind
Christmas,
of there is a lot of kind of like like in some people do a bit of scaremongering and stuff, but you have to understand when people have seen things in their own backyards in terms of their own people, and they're thinking like with Banksy and like myself, when I look at the Punjab and stuff like that, we have seen how it can get to a point, and now you're only looking within a short time spell. Like when I'm looking at I tend to look at things from, it could be like 100, 200 years time, whatever, and it is possible that certain things could change to that degree if you don't tackle it now. The mindset of the Muslim community that they can't be encroaching on certain things and demanding certain leeways because of their faith. They have to understand they're in the UK, and if they want to practice their faith, it's got to be within their own four walls. Do you understand?
Oh, thanks,
Private matter.
Banksy.
Oh, no worries. No worries.
Anyway, I need to shoot anyway, man.
Good
Take
talking
care,
to you,
I'll see you
Raj.
later on.
It's been-
Talking
Happy
to you, man.
Christmas, everybody, man.
Yeah,
Or
Very
happy
happy
Shadikmas.
Christmas to you, man.
Happy Shadikmas. Happy
Happy-
Shadikmas.
happy
Happy New Year.
Mortadine Day.
Right. Well, I think I'm gonna
Whatever that
absolutely
is.
bounce.
No worries.
It's 2:00 in the
One thing I
morning.
wanted to say, Boti, before you depart, I would love for us to. This is what I wanted. This is how I would say. I would love for you to be right. You are the glass is half full guy, and I hope, absolutely hope against hope, that you and your vision is the right one, and that this country will never be Islamist, and all the Muslims will become secular Sadiq Javed style Muslims. But I fear that you have you have a hope beyond hope. It's almost a fool's hope. I don't see it. I don't see it replicated anywhere else where Muslims have become majority, when Muslims have become numerous. There is no example of what you're saying.
There is no historical evidence for
Exactly.
that. No record.
That's the only problem. I
None.
don't have anything that I can look upon and go, oh, well, it happened over there. Well, it could happen over here. At the moment, we are experimenting with a very, very volatile ideology, and I personally am in fear that we shouldn't be experimenting with this ideology. We should keep it, caged. We should keep it
Banksy, what can
subdued.
we do, man? I mean, what are you suggesting? I mean, so look, if we follow your logic,
Okay, I'm going to translate you what
Oh,
he's suggesting.
so,
He's
what,
suggesting
yeah,
what
just
I'm going to tell you in more brutal way, to be honest, because maybe somebody should tell you that Islam is a threat to our freedoms and our lifestyle, and we have tried for for a few decades. I mean, they have tried, the Western Europeans, to domesticate this animal. They
oh,
failed in every country, every European country. It failed. They are even more. And the worst thing is that the grandchildren of the Muslim immigrants are more Muslim at times. They are more radical in their religion
mm,
than their grandparents and their parents. And the problem is that there is no other conclusion from a rational point of view
I
to
need
think
to
we are
disassociate
done.
myself. That they're not animals. They're not
no, no,
animals.
no. We're not talking about people. We're
No,
talking about the religion, the ideology. He's being
Well,
a bit.
no, but the
yes, the
word
religion
animals
is
was
the
used.
animal that I'm
I
Yeah,
talking
want
about.
to disassociate myself completely from that.
I
But
know, I know.
uh,
Uh,
it,
and I
the
agree
thing, look,
that
the thing is that what do you? I'm sorry, but I disassociate myself from the comments just made. But that's
Well,
look.
this is
where
the
does
part
that
of
I
lead?
know
the
That can
animal.
only
MC
Well,
end
can be
with
you
a
don't have
blood.
to
can be a
associate
bit
with me if you don't
Can
want
only,
to.
bit
what
You
you're
have
brutal.
both
to,
talking about can only end with blood. If you can't, you've got to be.
Well,
There's
I will give you a couple of solutions, although they may seem radical. Although I'm not entirely against the Chinese solution. I don't think that there is.
That's never going to happen.
They're not. They're not. They're not. They've gone a little bit OTT
That's
from
not going to
my
happen.
perspective. But then I can see that I can see why they're doing what they're doing, and how they're trying to combat, and that is their solution to their Islamic problem. I can see India's solution to their Islamic problem.
I
They're
think we've got to stop. I think we've got to listen. We've had a good conversation, and I think we've now got to a point where we've actually got to stop because, I mean, I think that there are questions about the sort of legality of what we're talking about now.
well, no, I mean we're not
may I
encouraging
say to
anyone.
you
We're
something,
just pointing out
Boti?
where these things are. What I'm trying to say to you is that Islam is not going to stop, and it's certainly not going to go away. What what we have to do is we have to change our attitude to how we treat this particular ideology. Now we deal with ideologies all the time, and we make them marginalized, and we treat the people that follow these ideologies like lepers all the time. If we were just talking about neo Nazis right now, if I was talking about KKK members, you wouldn't have any problem with totally disavowing them, shunning them from society, pushing them to the farthest corners of our society, so that they're always at the out, at the outskirts of our society. They're never
And you're
considered to
suggesting
be
we do that
Even
meaningful.
being
with the
violent to
Sorry.
them.
entire Muslims?
No, no, but what I mean
Even
is,
being
if you
violent to
just
them.
reverse, if you just transform Islam to Nazi, neo-Nazi, or to Ku Klux Klan, you know that we have marginalized these people. But you don't feel guilty about that, though, do you? You don't feel bad about marginalizing neo Nazis, not allowing them to hold rallies, build churches or buildings of worship. You're not
But
going to
they
let
don't. I mean,
anyone to build
they
a
don't.
building
They, they,
worshipping
they,
Hitler, are you?
if you go onto the Hope, I don't know that there's any Nazis in this country. If you go onto the Hope Not
Well,
Hate website,
excluding Muslim radicals,
Yeah.
they are like the brown Nazis.
Well, let's stop. Let's just go ahead. Go ahead. What I'm saying is, okay, you said hope not hate.
I mean, the thing is that that if you go onto the Hope Not Hate website, the actual numbers of people that are extreme Nazi, that are Nazis, that are
Yeah.
the far right, they actually have projections of the numbers, and you're talking about very, very small numbers,
Exactly.
right? So it's not like, I mean, I understand that there's some countries in Eastern Europe where there's a very large sort of Nazi presence, sort of far right, extreme right
Sure.
sort of presence. But it's my understanding, and I'm not an expert
Okay,
on this.
I
But
am living in one of those countries, and this is what you call Nazism. There, it is considered healthy patriotism and nationalism. Nobody is putting colored people there in ovens, and nobody is discriminating against them. But we will not let anybody tell us or overthrow our way of life in the name of tolerance. We will not go for it. To be honest,
Yeah.
we would
the
rather
danger is that that's
country to the
how
ground than allow us to.
that's how the Nazis started, wasn't it? First of all, we other somebody else.
Well,
First of
Well,
all, we other somebody
it's
else, and then it leads to Auschwitz.
okay, but the thing
I,
is,
look,
but the thing is,
I'm not
Bochi.
intelligent enough to keep this conversation.
No,
But
no, no, Bochi. All I'm asking you is acknowledge that we do other neo-Nazis, we do other Ku Klux Klan members, and we don't find any problem with that. Is it true that we don't allow them in our mainstream society? They are not welcome in our mainstream society. So we do totally discriminate against certain ideologies. So discriminating against certain ideologies isn't the problem. The problem is that we cherry pick which ones we discriminate against because the ones we think are really, really bad or the ones that we think are not that bad. That's what it really comes down to. It's our
the
attitude.
logical conclusion of what you're saying, Banksy, and you've got to, I thought you were a better man than this, right? The logical conclusion of that is that you disassociate from the Muslim community, and you simply can't do
Well,
that.
no, we can. We can.
No.
I think the first step, personally, and I think I'm in the very much minority, but I will always advocate for this. The first thing we can do to solve our the Islamic problem or Islamification of Europe's problem is to reclassify Islam. Once we reclassify Islam as no longer a religion but a political ideology,
and a totalitarian system.
and totalitarian system, exactly, it will radically change how we treat Islam in Europe. It will be a night and day alteration of how we approach Islam as an ideology in Europe. And once we do that, then we will find Muslims change their attitudes towards how they wish to, express their religion or express their Islam in Britain and in Europe. And they will also have to change all those. And by the way, all the Sharia courts can immediately stop. All the halal meat can immediately stop. All of those problems go away because we no longer have to equalize religions. Just because the Jews have it, that doesn't mean the Muslims get it. Because just because the communists or the socialists get something, that doesn't mean we give it to the neo-Nazis or the communists or the capitalists. We don't treat ideologies equally.
In fact, communists shouldn't get it either.
Yeah, but what I mean is just, we don't say, oh, the capitalists have this, so we have to give it to the communists. No, we don't treat ideologies this way. We treat them separately and we deal with them separately. It's just somehow, for some reason, religions, we have to equalize religions all across the board. So if the Christians get a church, the Muslims get a mosque, and the Jews get a synagogue, and the Hindus get a temple. Well, we don't have to do that if we
I'm sorry, guys.
reclassify Islam.
I've got to go. But listen, it's up until about 20 minutes ago. This was a great conversation.
was
This
great.
is frightening.
It was
This is. It was a good conversation up until about 20 minutes ago. This is frightening me. Actually, I know.
But what I
this
mean is,
frightening me.
why does an ideology and its reclassification frighten you? Boaty?
The thing is that it's not as simple as that. The things that you're suggesting would lead to
What would it lead
terrible
to?
violence, bloodshed.
No. Why would it lead
Well,
to violence and
Boti,
bloodshed?
I
let
listen.
me,
I don't want to
uh,
say anything
hey,
more, but
Boti.
listen. I think you really ought to sort of think about what you're saying now. With respect, I disassociate myself with what you're saying now. We've had a fantastic conversation up until about 20 minutes
No
ago. I
worries.
don't agree with this.
I,
I
I
don't agree
I
with
I
it.
appreciate that you
You know
don't
what
agree with it,
provokes
but
the
I would
violence?
I would say think about ideologies and and how we treat different ideologies. Think of Islam, take Islam and Christianity and Judaism out of its religious high pedestal and bring them down to the same level as communism, socialism, capitalism, Nazism, and all the other isms that we have. And then start reevaluating these on that footing, and you see that actually treating them like ideologies rather than this holier than now religions will change your perspective on how we should change, associate with these what we call religions. But I just see them as ideas. I don't see them as anything special. I see them as ideas of human beings, and some are helpful and some are detrimental to our society.
We've got to try and live in peace and harmony and tolerate. Oh, right. It's been really good talking
No
to
Uh,
you.
worries, mate. No
okay,
worries.
Okay, I'm going to
let me tell
bounce.
you
Okay,
something.
take care.
Okay,
Take care,
it's
mate.
it's a utopian dream about peace, tolerance, and harmony. Oh, okay,
I know, but
gone.
the thing is, I don't begrudge Boti's ideas. I think he is the voice of many many people in Britain, and he is the reasonable, down the middle kind of person, and
Well,
he's a
then,
hopeful person. He thinks that ideas, ideologies couldn't radically change our society, but he knows they can because he has examples of Nazism and communism. So he knows ideologies can vastly change a society. But I don't understand why he thinks Islam couldn't possibly have the same influence. I just
well,
don't
there are a few
understand
reasons
it.
for that, to be honest.
I don't. I mean,
Knowing,
I still think that these are the kind of people we should engage with in our society because they are the
well,
average guys. They're the average. They are the normies, if you like, in our society. Maybe
well, to be honest,
I'm too. I'm too red pilled or black pilled about Islam, so I feel I'm too far to one side, and maybe you're too far to one side, MC. Maybe we're
I'm radical, to be honest.
sorry.
I am radical, to be honest. That's true.
Maybe we are. Maybe we've been radicalized. Maybe we're no longer
I was
objective about our
3 years
views.
of living in London, near a Muslim neighborhood, interacting with those people. And after that, reading the Quran, the Hadith, and putting that all together, have made my decision. And anybody that thinks that we can live together for eternity with those people without them dominating over us,
Mm.
really, it's a utopian dream, like communism or like Marx's dream of booty that have left not so long ago. To be honest with you, you are really scaring me that he is the average Brit, as you talk about him. I just then wonder how the hell Boris have won, how Tories have won if he is the average. Oh my fucking god! to be to be honest,
Yeah.
I hope to change sooner or later because Britain is too important country to fall down to that, and and frankly, I want to see Britain Islamic because the trends are going from Britain to the rest of the world,
I I
and
know.
it's
I don't know. I don't want to be. I don't ever want to face myself in the mirror and say, "Oh, I've become a radical now. I am one of the radicals." I've always tried to think of myself as someone who can hold the middle ground, who can actually see both sides of the arguments, and some of the sort of find reasonable, rational, sensible solutions to problems. But I'll be honest, I don't think Islam has a sensible, rational, reasonable solution. I think Islam is incredibly incredibly forceful
yes,
with its ideas, and its believers believe this truly believe it to their core. They believe that they are better off dead and die fighting in the name of Allah than to live in this planet. How are you supposed to
By,
find the middle ground with someone like that?
by the way, Banksy, can you tell me just one thing about Islam being dead? And is it true that if a piece of pork will touch a Muslim second before he's going to die, he's not entering his paradise? You know,
I
not getting
guess
his.
I don't know for sure. I think people like Takia Watch. Actually, I want to just give a shout out to Takia Watch. Some of the best videos on Islam, and if you want to be red pilled on Islam, this is the man for you.
Well, details are important to because sometimes so-called meaningless details give you the ability to destroy the entire structure. And frankly, yes, Islam should be destroyed in its present form. It's a threat, and
Yeah.
even if even if I'm going to not live to that day, I may have children, and what am I going to say to my children in a few decades? Grandpa or dad, what did you do to save us from Islam? Well, I have kept my mouth shut. No, I want to say that to them.
This is it. This is the problem. You know, it's like I don't know what to I don't know. I mean, sometimes I doubt everything every day that I think and I think I know. This is the one thing that I've found in life is I am always constantly in doubt of what am I doing? What am I thinking? What am I have I put myself in an echo chamber? Because this is what Boti was talking about earlier on. He says on the internet we find ourselves in our echo chambers. He was saying all the different YouTube channels and stuff people go to, and it is true. We are echo. I sometimes think maybe I've echo chambered myself too much. That's why I
Yeah,
throw myself into leftist media like the Young Turks and David Pacman and other people and CNN and stuff, because I think okay, I gotta absorb some of this stuff to be able to find my objectivity again. Maybe I've listened to Fox News and I don't know other right wing outlets too much. But when I listen to these idiots, I realize they're idiots and they're liars. They're not just idiots. I wish they were fools who didn't know what they were doing. They are
and
out and out lying about things now.
99% of all of them, in other words, of Fox News, of the Young Turks, whatever, are ideologically biased and
Yes.
business biased. That's the problem.
Yeah, and not only ideologically biased, I would even take a naive bias over willful lying. They are no longer just ideologically biased, like they're leaning towards this side or that side. No, they will not only lie, bold-faced lie to you about certain information, but also omit massive chunks of information which would go against their narrative. And this happens on both sides. This happens both on leftist media, right media, whichever side you look at, they do this. And I've found out
They
way too
do.
many of these things.
Of course, they do. The political party that is ruling now my own country is also very ideologically biased.
Yeah,
They will not allow one religion, but they will allow the older religion to expand and to do their
there you
fuckery,
go.
to be honest, literally and metaphorically. That's the problem.
This is what I mean. This is what I mean, and it's so hard, and it's such exhausting. It is absolutely exhausting trying to constantly look for the truth in the things these different groups say, and I think that's where they win. It's the fact that apathy is their greatest weapon. That people will
That's
not bother to check on what they're saying. They rely on that so much is unbelievable because once you start fact checking, once you start actually checking the outlets, I mean, my simplest way for me is just I I subscribe to both left wing and right wing political news outlets because the left wing will tell you all the things the right wing doesn't want to tell you to know, but they omit their own stuff and lie about other stuff, and then the right wing will tell you all about the things that the left wing would not tell you and lie about some of the things about the left wing.
Yes, and for example, we have two religions, two from the Middle East. Well, three, of course, but Christianity doesn't have this ritual slaughter nonsense. So is kosher, and so is halal slaughter barbaric to me, and I don't care.
Yeah.
And frankly, both of them uh, having their own bias. I know that because when somebody wanted to ban halal slaughter here and there, of course, both of them united just for that cause, even if they would go on each other's throats. I mean, Muslims and Jews, the religious ones.
Yeah.
Then, when they have their own business, the mutual business, then they unite, like the Republicans and Democrats, especially never Trumpers, for example, and vast more Democrats that want to impeach Trump no matter what the cost, even if actually impeachment doesn't mean that he is flying out from the office. And that would be even funnier in 2020 because they have done it. They have shot themselves in the foot. And, the British elections now were just how to say it, a prequel to what was going to happen in America in 2020. And I know maybe it's going to be even funnier than 2016. Who knows? But I have to tell you something. I'm really glad that Britain have chosen the Tories and really rejected Corbyn's so-called ideas. Really, I have a radical anti-communist capitalist in my country. He's well known from the European Parliament. He's the one that have said that women are weaker,
Oh,
smaller,
yes.
less aggressive. You know about who I'm talking about?
Yeah, yeah. This old gentleman, bald.
Yes, Janusz Korwin-Mikke. That's his
That's right. That's right.
name.
Yeah.
He, for example, is so radical and so anti-communist. I can remember one of his quote that a monkey is a better voter than a socialist because a monkey at least think about it before he or she going to vote. But a socialist, in other words, a Corbynist, will always vote left. And remembering what he has said and seeing the behavior of the Labour Party, I was like, now I know from where he has it. Really.
Yes. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, I'm amazed that Corbyn exists and that that the British political establishment allow him to go that far. I mean,
Well, I mean, in all honesty, I think I'm sort of glad to some extent because if it wasn't for the Corbynites and Corbyn
yes,
himself, we wouldn't have the government that we have right now, and we would never get Brexit out of the way. It would still be it'll still be discussed
yes,
and another referendum and another this and another that. There'll be like 100 other votes in order to try to get around basically Brexit. So yeah, uh,
yes,
it's
he's like the Anjem Chowdhury of Labour Party.
yeah, literally, yeah, he is. He's the Ajam Chowdhury of the Labour
Everything,
Party. That's awesome.
but he shouldn't say. Who knows if the Labour members were like, "No, you fucking idiot! Don't say that. No, they shouldn't know about it." Oh fuck, Corbyn, you have to do that. They're probably like that, just like the many mullahs and other especially radical Muslims are like, Anjem, shut your fucking mouth. I'm sure they are like that about Anjem, but Anjem at least he's honest, and I respect that because you don't get that very often
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
from them.
I don't know. It's at the moment. At the
Yes, is it?
moment, we have what we have as far as the political. I mean, I don't really trust the conservatives either. Because
Of
I
course,
still feel that they have their own leftist ideals and leftist agendas. So the game is semi-rigged for certain things to take place. If we get out of Europe, that will be a radical shift in British sort of
to be
policy
honest,
government.
I am praying on it, and I want to see it, and I hope that he'll deliver that Boris in 2020 will deliver the entire Brexit, and it will be a lesson, at least for the European Union, if not the beginning of the end of that organization. Because I don't care if the European Union want to go and beat Soviet Union to zero. I want it to collapse. I want it to go to the dustbin of history. We haven't joined the European Union as a country just to repeat our experience from the East.
Yeah.
Just now, instead of Moscow, there will be Brussels that will be telling us how we should dress, what we should eat, and who knows, even who to marry someday.
Well, I mean, yeah. There's actually Takir Watch said he wants to know about how's the situation in Poland at the moment.
Well, the situation is so. Unfortunately, as you know, the heritage of the communist period haven't died out entirely yet, because there are people that have been raised there and live to this day. I'm also, of course, talking about the current ruling political party. This party have introduced a few programs that, frankly, for me, as a believer in capitalism, makes me furious, to be honest. Like, for example, 500 plus, that for every second child you get 500 plus every month from the state.
500 euros.
No, 500 zloty plus. Thankfully,
Zlotys,
euros. There will be an uproar, because 1 zloty is like, like €1 is 4 zloty. So you know what kind of.
Okay, that'll be a lot.
Yes. To be honest, that's socialist bullshit to me, and I don't care if they want to increase the population, whatever. It will only backfire. It will destroy the economy sooner or later if they're going to do that again and again. And the population have really disappointed me in this year with two ways, basically. First is this 500 plus.
Yeah.
What is basically, even I would even call it a profession, but by certain women to live this way, because let's face it, they'll probably give it up on makeup or on other shit, instead of giving that to the child that they will get birth to, and they will not have to work. And of course, who is the one that will be paying for that? Me also. I have to pay for the children that I haven't got the fund to make. And that was pissed me off the most, to be honest. That's one thing. Second is another extension of the church's power, especially that there was a documentary from Poland. I could even post on your Discord that, about the pedophilia in the Polish Catholic Church, and how they are protected, as I have said today. Because if you are a priest, this is the only way in Poland to get away with pedophilia. Because the church will send you somewhere else. In other words, I blame the entire organization, and yes, I think the entire organization is to be boycotted, and that is one of the reasons why I will never get married in this country. And if any woman will tell me, but what the neighbors will think, they're going to be conflict in my family, and I'm like always, okay, I am marrying you or the family or the neighbors. No way I'm going to please the public or get involved in any theater like that. I don't care. This organization is taking money from me against my will every month.
Taxes, you mean?
Yes, taxes.
Yeah.
Without my approval, and that's only the thing that I have to pay. There are also other things, like, for example, the weddings, the baptism, the first communion. Those are only three that you have to pay separately. The funerals, the premarital education, as they call it. It is like a 3 year going to church for being able to marry in that institution. What actually, I was pressured really hard to do it, but I was like, okay, I'm doing it, and I'm not going to this organization ever again. And I don't care about that stupid nonsense. And really, I am a little bit of a social outcast because of it, but I'm happy. I'm glad that I haven't been broken down by the society and by them. And if the women have a problem that I don't want to marry them in a church because they have some kind of an imagination about how their days should look like, that's the problem. That's fine. The argument will especially make me furious.
Well,
That but what the other people will say, really, there is nothing more there's not a bigger turn off from the idea that I should spend with somebody, or especially with a woman, if she has this mentality. I could
yeah.
not stand.
Well, look. I mean, I presume MC, you're still in your 20s, right?
No, I'm 34 and I'm still going on, and I don't care anymore.
Okay, but I mean, you're still relatively young. You know, your attitude towards life and things could potentially change. I mean, it is difficult. I'm not gonna lie to you. As a young man, in a especially in a gynocentric society, which pretty much most of Western Europe is, even Eastern Europe to some extent,
Poland is
it's
no different. At
yeah,
times
it's
it's worse.
you know what I mean. It's difficult to find a good woman. That's the point, bottom line, basically, and you do have to sort of contend with female nature. Uh, but I will say, I'm not one who's I myself is I'm not married. I don't have children, so I'm not gonna say that uh, do something that I myself haven't even done. But I will say, don't write off women entirely. There are good ones out there. There are women who are incredibly loving, incredibly generous, and they are not just out to marry you and divorce you and take all your money. There are
I know.
women who are genuinely lovely, decent women out there who just will love you for you, and it does happen. It's rare. It's not easy.
It
It's
is.
it's like finding a diamond in a in the sea. Uh, but it happens. It does happen, and be hopeful. Don't give up.
No, I don't, but I will not lower it. And if they are what they are suggesting me at times, I mean, even my family or any woman there is marry out of consideration. They're just not
Yeah, no,
telling this.
don't do it for those reasons.
And
Definitely not.
you know what I've said to every one of them? Okay, I can marry out of consideration, but the woman have to have 3 times 80 as a number. 3 times 80. I mean, she have to be 18 years old, 80 million even pounds on her account, have 80 minutes left of life, just to make sure that she can write this all of this on my account. Marry. Even I even
Well, as
even
long as
with
you're not setting up some impossible standard.
I know. But if you would think about it hard and deep, what they are telling you when they are saying that you are getting old, nobody will want you, or they are scaring you with this loneliness, like it
No,
is
no,
like something terrible. No, it isn't.
yeah, no. Don't let that be a fear. Don't get married out of fear or out of
Yes,
desperation. Those are the worst
most people are doing it.
motives.
Most people are cowards like that,
Yeah,
and I don't want to have to be with somebody like that, frankly.
yeah.
And yes,
I think you're red pilled enough to not let those things be a motivator for you to get married.
well, I was red pilled in UK when I was an immigrant, and have seen how my own minority is behaving, especially the woman from this minority. Then I have seen the female nature one on one, firsthand.
Yeah. Well, as I said, I don't. I've seen. I know of, and I have experienced female nature, and I know that there are a lot of women who just want to be taken care of. They don't really want to be a partner. They want to be a submissive, even though they still want to have their independence and be strong, fabulous women. And yet at the same time, they want the man to pick up every check and pay every bill. So yes, there are those who see men as walking ATMs, but there are exceptions in that rule, and I myself even haven't fully given up, although I know that those exceptions are exceedingly rare, and I will never allow society to
Well,
shame me, number one, or to embarrass me, or to guilt me, or to scare me into marrying some, you know, getting into some unhappy, half-assed marriage with some woman that I will resent within a few years. There's no way on earth I will die before I let that happen. So
I
I won't.
respect
I will rather
that.
die alone than to be in some depressing wed marriage.
Well,
Uh,
Banksy, thank you for saying that. I really now I really don't feel that much alone, to be honest, because I'm surrounded by people with the quite the opposite mentality, and at times
yeah.
it's hard to be honest with resisting it.
Yeah, no, I can imagine. I can imagine it is hard. Society constantly wants to shame you into getting involved. Do you realize how many times a day people call me some sad, lonely, incel, fat man who can never get a woman in his entire life, and they have
They want
no idea the reality of it is
they
completely the
want you to believe
opposite.
that. They want to convince you that you are that
But
because
that's what I mean. That's what I mean. They want to shame you because they think that your worth is only as much as a woman is willing to be with you. That is how they equate a human being's worth, a man's worth. You know, they never say that to a woman. You notice women never get shamed by, oh, you're just some sad, fat, you'll never get a man, sort of, you're gonna die alone, spinster. It's always the man who has to be shamed about the fact that he can't find a woman. But a woman, because a woman can actually find, no matter how fat and ugly a woman is, she can post a message on Facebook and say, I need to have sex tonight, and they'll have 10 guys line up at her door. No matter how incredibly gross a woman is, she can always find a guy that will shag her because men are just thirsty. But men, on the other hand, are constantly shamed by society, by people, about how they can't get a woman. Like you're only as worthy as how much a woman rates you, as finds you a suitable sexual partner. My worth isn't based on a woman's approval. I'll promise you that. No woman is going to make me feel good about myself or bad about myself because she finds me sexually attractive or not. That is not how I measure my worth. It is not attached to a female's vagina. My worth is far more than that. I value myself far better than that, than to be tethered to some female's sexual organs. This is absolute nonsense that the society tries to convince you that you're only worth something if a woman says you're worth something. No, you're not. You're worth something regardless, and I
well,
am worth a lot.
having that awareness is very dangerous, according to the government and especially to society, because deep down inside they know they would like to be like the people that think like you or like me. That will be also brave enough to do it, because frankly they know that they are deep down inside. They know they are cowards. That they were too afraid to resist and to go their own way that they want to.
Mm.
uh, because they are passive. They even don't want to think like that. They're afraid of thinking like that.
Well,
Really,
they are. Most men,
because
I'll be honest, most men are thirsty. Most men still feel that they are nothing unless a woman finds them attractive, unless a woman finds them worthy. They sit around their lives waiting for women to give them their value, to give them a sense of importance
that's true.
or worth effectively. I just can't believe there are men who still do that, who still, in this day and age, with all this information, with all this knowledge and philosophy and everything that we have at our disposal, they still think that you're only worth something if a woman deems it so. No, no, you're not. You are worth a lot just as you. And if a woman happens to like you, that's just a bonus. That's just something separate from you.
Of course.
That is just, that's just a fortunate happenstance. That isn't how you should value yourself. Don't ever value yourself based on I'm not saying even for women. Don't consider yourself valuable or worth something if a man finds you attractive or not. No, you give yourself worth. You assign yourself how much you're valued by your standards, not other people's standards. I don't live for other people's approval. I live for my own approval and my own self satisfaction and my sense of worth and meaning in life. I give my life meaning. I don't wait for no Allah, no Yahweh, or no woman to give my life meaning. I find those meanings for myself, and if another human being, be it a woman, man, friend, whatever, finds their path matching or parallel to mine, and we can walk this path for a while with each other, and we give each other's lives meanings, great. And if that person's path veers away from mine, they go on their way, and I carry on with mine. But I don't sit around hoping someone will give me an approval. This is the world of instant gratification, of likes and shares and approvals that we get from our social media. This is why people are sitting around taking Instagram photos of themselves at their best looks and best images. My Instagram is full of my pictures at my hideous, at my absolute. I look for filters that make me look like a fucking monster. Because those are the only ones I find funny. I find interesting. The ones that twist your face into weird shapes and make you look like an alien, or make you look like some kind of horror character or something that is totally unpleasant, actually. It's not. I don't look for those that make my skin totally flawless and my nose a little bit smaller, because there's loads of those filters that women use all the time. And I don't really use Instagram. I hate Facebook and Instagram and all that crap. But my friend convinced me to go onto Instagram, so I occasionally post some crap on there. But every time I look for filters, I look for the most hideous or the most funniest or just anything that looks unnatural and it doesn't look like a human being, or it just makes you look weird as hell. Nothing. I would, I would encourage people to do that. Go for the unusual. Go for the weird. Go for the things that are not aesthetically pleasing, because that shit is everywhere. It's the weirdos that are rare.
Of course. Well, and one more thing about Instagram, especially Facebook. Those are Mark Zuckerberg properties, and we know about his
Yeah.
record about spying and selling people's data, and even taking people's fragile data, like
Yes.
even what kind of an illness they had or whatever. So no, I was never on Facebook and I was never on Instagram, and frankly, I'm grateful that I wasn't, and I'll never be. As maybe now, when I have a few things to cover me up, like a VPN and the Tor browser, if you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I
No,
agree
I'm
with
like
you. I don't like, I told my friends, I tell all my friends, don't use Facebook, don't use Facebook Messenger. I try not to use WhatsApp, but unfortunately WhatsApp is so ingrained into the groups that I'm in that is really difficult. I'm trying to pull them out of that and use Signal, or maybe even to some extent Telegram. I still haven't started using Telegram myself, but I don't want to use Zuckerberg's products anymore. I'm trying to get myself off that. I would rather not have to use Google's products, but unfortunately Google is so tied up. It's a duopoly. I either have
yes, it's
Google
hard.
or Apple.
Unfortunately, it's hard to boycott Google.
Yeah.
Fortunately, anyway, they have stopped to gather data about me, because now with using all those things like that DuckDuckGo and the Tor browser and the VPN, they don't really know who the hell is doing that. So
Yeah.
that makes me a little happier. And and even if I would like to have my presence online, I will never tell where really I am living, and probably even this avatar and this name that you see will vanish
Yeah.
for a time. Just maybe you're going to know that I am me, I am I. Just to know who you're dealing with. But the rest, I want to make for the people there as hard as possible to track me,
Yeah.
to get any information, because this is what we are doing. The topics that we are engaging in, they will want to shut us down sooner or later, but totally, completely, because especially when those elections in the United States are coming.
Oh
I
yeah,
know,
100%. 100%.
and
Not just elections in the United States, elections in Britain, elections in Germany, Poland, everywhere. Anywhere that there is an election, these companies would want to now have some kind of dominant control because they've recognized that the internet now wins elections. So they've come to realize the power of the internet, and they the politicians and the media hate the internet because they can't control the internet. But companies like Google, Facebook are at least trying to control their monopoly, their domain, you know what I mean, their
you
sphere.
don't have to worry
Sorry?
because I mean, but I'm very optimistic about it because no matter how big a company or corporation is, or any entity, it is not indestructible, and sooner or later people will figure it out, and they will be so
Absolutely.
pissed that they will say, "To hell with Google, to hell with Facebook, to hell with even
Oh
YouTube."
yeah.
They will go somewhere else because the human nature is that human hates tyranny, and especially from cultures where rebelliousness is encouraged. Like, for example, my own.
Yes.
You think, why do we oppose the European Union so much, and especially now, 47% of Poles, what actually is a good information, 47% of my country's population thinks that our membership in the European Union is a bad thing. It
Yeah,
wasn't that bad for them. It's getting higher and higher. And why? Because the European Union behaves like a tyrannical entity that thinks that they can even took away our identity
that's right.
from us without opposition. Well, go back to the history classes, fuck people. I mean, those in the parliament, they haven't learned anything from that.
I know.
The Soviet, the Soviet Union was also a totalitarian empire, but when this constrainment of people, when this tyranny have softened a little bit, then they have shown and they have told them and proved to them that they will be not pushed around and they will have their identities and they don't care if the Russians like it or not and they will fight for it. Even small nations like Chechnya, because
Absolutely. Absolutely.
they're part of the Russian empire to this day. But I'm sure that sooner or later the Chechens will have their independence, even if it's going to be an Islamic state. But that's their business, and they are far away from us, thankfully.
Yeah, I mean, this is the sort of conflict that someone like me has. Although I want the Chechens to have their independence, I know they're gonna make it into an Islamic shithole. So
Yes.
so
Well,
there's like a there's like that revolutionary instinct in me that says, yeah, go on, you guys, win your freedom, win your country, and then there's that other side that goes, oh shit, they're gonna become an Islamic shithole.
yes.
they're gonna they're gonna take that freedom and just make it into a fucking tyranny, Islamic tyranny instead. Instead of a Russian tyranny, it'll be just an Islamic tyranny. So
Yeah.
not really that much of a change. Uh,
Yes.
it's
Between
crazy. It's crazy.
radiation acute disease and an Ebola virus. That's the choice that they have basically.
Yeah, literally, yeah. So it's crazy. It is absolutely crazy that people.
Uh, there's another place that will probably have another choice, very similar. Let's say that Israel will resist forever and will achieve total victory over the Islamic states that are surrounding it, but they have a religious cancer of their own, eating up slowly their own country. It's called
Yeah,
Judaism. It's exactly classical
yeah,
Judaism, as it's called. It is not a threat to the West, of course. It's not a threat to Poland. It's not a threat to anybody but to the Jews themselves.
yes, yes,
Because
true.
if the leftist Jewish papers are telling the truth, and I am sometimes sitting there on the Israeli leftist papers, that thanks to the increasing power of the rabbinate there, uh, ordinary Jews with marrying themselves, let alone the goyim. To be honest,
Exactly, exactly.
that's only one of the problem. Also, the classification: who is a Jew?
Well,
convert.
yeah, there's all that. Listen, my friend, I'm gonna have to get some sleep because it's Christmas Day tomorrow. Gotta get up and go down to mother's and have all sorts of things. Gotta get up a little bit early. It's been a pleasure, sir, as always, and I will. Let's catch up soon. Take
Well,
care,
of course,
MC.
and take care of.
Have
Bye and
yourself a
Merry
wonderful
Christmas.
evening, and I'll talk to you
And just in
soon.
case, Happy New Year, because
Happy,
I don't know.
yes, Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. If I don't speak to you before, take care, my friend. Have a good night. Bye bye. Okay. Okay, boys and girls. We are done for another show. I'm trying to end this before we hit the 4 hour mark because, well, it's gonna be too long. Guys, thank you for coming down. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe as always with all the usual things. This channel is my primary channel for a while now. Even when I get my other channel back, I'll probably be posting more on this channel. I'm going to try and set up regular streams, but for now, yeah, please let anyone that you know that doesn't know about this particular channel to subscribe to Banksy Star Live because my other channels is under threat actually. I think they're trying to they're trying to get my channel shut down. I can see that the Muslims on YouTube are working very hard to close down the Banksy style channel. So keep an eye out. This may be my only channel in the few months to come. I don't know. I don't know. But at the moment, I'm gonna be under two strikes for until March next year. So things are gonna be kind of hairy. So please subscribe and tell everyone about this one. And I don't know. In conclusion, um, I don't really know what to conclude with. Have a Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. Love your loved ones. Hug them tight. Kiss them. And let's hope 2020 is gonna be a kick-ass year. I'll see you guys before that though. If you guys are interested, Manny Cinder is doing a stream on Friday. I will be on that stream at least around 1 o'clock. So I will be in that stream for a couple of hours possibly. I don't know how things are gonna go down, but he's doing a stream on Friday, so I'll be at Manny Cinders. I'll probably do a stream myself later on, just to add more content to this channel. I'm also in the middle of doing a Star Wars Rise of Skywalker review. I will edit that and hopefully post that on this channel soon as well. That's it, really. That's all I have for you guys. My homework for the next few weeks is a few things like that. Try to get some videos cut up and edited and put on here. I've got another car Dawa video that I've done as well, which I've got to have to post. So those are my upcoming stuff. Keep an eye out. And yeah, have yourselves a wonderful, wonderful Christmas. Enjoy your time with your family, enjoy the food, and keep close, keep tight, keep your loved ones close, because you never know when they're gone. Life is a fleeting thing. And yeah, I love you all. I'll see you guys soon, hopefully Friday, but we'll see how that unfolds. And in the meanwhile, tickle your ass with a feather. Ciao.
We wish you a